nonprofits. Please don't miss out on this. Even your doctor would tell you to get an expert second opinion, and we do a lot of work for doctors. Download the Innovation Refunds app now or go to getrefunds.com to potentially get a payroll tax refund of $26,000 per employee. Getrefunds.com. Getrefunds.com.
It's time for Warriors This Week.
Shot clock down to 10. Poole, dribble drive to Thompson in the corner. He'll launch with 5 and for 3 and say goodnight.
Now, here's John Dickinson.
Yeah, it's John Dickinson, and it's Evan Giddings sitting in for Whitey Gleason here. Good Saturday morning to you. As always, we're going to be with you here for the next 3 hours. As always, we're going to be taking your phone calls and your text messages at 888-957-9570 as we get you set up for the Warriors and the Kings Game 4 of the first round of the NBA playoffs, which are coming your way right here at 95.7 The Game. Tomorrow, 12:30, Warriors Live is at 11. Want to let everybody know, and I will throughout the course of the program today, you can join me at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, right outside of Chase Center, as Warriors Live is going to start a little bit early, 11 o'clock tomorrow. So stop by, say hi, have a brew, get some food before you head into Chase, and you can enjoy Warriors Live from 11 to 12 before the Warriors and the Kings. Evan, good to be with you, my man. Welcome in, and we got a lot going on here in this series.
Yes, we do, JD. It's a pleasure to be with you here until 1 o'clock on this beautiful Saturday, a gorgeous day, because, look, it's the day before Game 4. It's been an exciting series thus far. Sacramento grabbing the first 2 games, Golden State responding with a haymaker in Game 3, and now it does feel like it's a little like this series is now getting to start, okay? We've seen each side throw their best punch to this point, and now we get to see what the response is finally from Sacramento as the Warriors, of course, held serve at home court.
Yeah, it's all about adjustments and the emotional adjustment and the back and forth of whoever wins Game 1. There's this added pressure on whoever loses for the next game. And
who's got the momentum?
You go down 0-2, and then there's obviously a must-win situation for the Warriors in Game 3. They come through, and now the question sort of shifts to, do the Warriors have something on them? Did the Warriors figure something out? And I go back to what Steve Kerr said after the game on Thursday, which is basically nothing's happened yet.
Yeah.
And I had kind of the paralyzing thought yesterday as I was getting ready to do my hit with you guys, with Steiny and Guru here, and I thought, wow, if this series goes 7, and it already has felt like it's gone on for about 3 weeks. If this series goes 7, it's not even half over yet.
No.
When you start thinking about everything that's gone on in this series, it's like, damn.
No, look, this is going to be the most stressful first-round series in the Dynasty. It already has been, and the fact that they were down 2-0, understood the situation. I mean, they alluded to it before the game. Steph Curry talked about it after the game. Even though you're not mathematically eliminated, everything does rest on Game 3 when you're down 2-0 at home. And they responded the way that you would expect defending champions to respond. Now, the question is, with this team and everything that they've been through this year, each time it feels like they've turned the corner, they've kind of reset a little bit. The question is now, can Sacramento, who has been the road warriors in the West this year, try and come out and regain some of that magic they found in the first 2 games, and especially in the last 5 minutes of each of those games, which were very tight, very close, despite them winning. And now if you're the Warriors, well, you're going to have to reintegrate Draymond Green. Does GP2 play in Game 4? How does Stephen Curry maintain the aggression and the dominance that he did in Game 3? Is Kevon Looney more of a factor? There are a lot of questions entering this Game 4. And, of course, we're going to hear from some of the Warriors later on today at practice. And so heading into tomorrow, we'll have maybe some more clarity to those questions. But that's what we got to talk about for the next 3 hours, Jay. A lot to get into.
Yeah, and you can start really with Draymond Green, because he is going to be back for the Warriors after missing Game 3 due to the suspension. And I was stunned, as I mentioned yesterday and on Warriors Wrap-Up on Thursday, at just how many callers unsolicited. Hey, the Warriors figured it out, but they figured it out because Draymond wasn't here. And you look at the game Kevon Looney had with the 429 line with the 9 assists
Iconic.
for Kevon Looney, and the job that he did against Sabonis, which is a job that he's done pretty effectively in two of the first three games, although I think even though Sabonis had a decent line in game two, the Warriors are making him work for everything that he's had to get in this series. But the fact that Looney and Draymond were separated, the fact that the ball was moving a little bit better, the Warriors were a little more patient and less frenetic. Look, to me, it's all silliness. Like maybe there is something for that one night. It upset the apple cart a little bit for Sacramento and what they had logged in their scouting report as, hey, we know everything the Warriors are going to do, and Mike Brown knows the playbook, and he's going to make life difficult on the Warriors. All right, maybe they flipped the spread a little bit on them in game three, but to me, that was survival for the Warriors. That's no way to live in this series as it moves forward, to just think that maybe you're better off without Draymond Green being in the fold. How do you work him back in? To me, it's more about the different lineup combinations and not necessarily the starting lineup, which hasn't really been a problem for the Warriors in this series. It's maybe Draymond's going to play a little less. Maybe Draymond's going to play with some different combinations and try to treat game four like a kitchen sink game the way they did in game three, but only with two really good additional pieces in Draymond and potentially Gary Payton II to add to the mix. To me, that should not be viewed as anything more than a positive for the Warriors, who maybe are starting to figure some things out about Sacramento, but then you're adding two good players, capable defenders, back in to help, just to help keep turning this thing in their direction.
Yeah, look, I think a big storyline in game three was kind of the difference in rotations by necessity, right? Because with Draymond Green and GP2 out, you're down two of your better defenders. And I think, like, if you want to say Mike Brown had an idea of what the Warriors were going to do with the familiarity he had, and maybe that helped them down the stretch of games 1 and 2, I'll hear that. And then in game three, by the property of disassociation, you're not exactly able to sort of have a good idea of what the Warriors will be. But I think Steve Kerr made some adjustments, specifically to Stephen Curry's minutes. We saw him come out a little bit earlier in the first and the third than usual, playing the majority of the second and the fourth. And maybe that's where you see Draymond Green along with Kevon Looney, because Steve Kerr has said multiple times he likes to stagger minutes so that one of them is on Sabonis at all times. Kevon Looney, of course, had to draw the bulk of that assignment, and the fact that he wasn't in foul trouble, I thought, played a big role in what he was able to do in game three, especially with his aggression on the offensive glass. But if you are the Warriors right now, as it pertains to Draymond Green, to me, it's a no-brainer. He's back in, and he's back playing the way that he used to, because generally when Draymond Green has gone through a situation like this, whether it's an ejection, whether it's a bad game, it's a technical foul, it's a kerfuffle with a teammate or an opposing team, he has responded. And he always, I imagine that with him at home during game three, he's watching each and every one of those plays saying, here's how I can be better. Here's how I need to affect the game, whether it's passing or defense. To me, Draymond Green, I don't have any problem assuming that he'll be back and better than before, because that's what he's been. In the finals last year, him getting benched against Memphis, him getting ejected, each time that he has been kind of lowered or humbled, so to speak, he's come back even better, and so I expect to see him on game four.
Yeah, you mentioned two of what have been many instances where we've seen this before with Draymond, and the most recent two in the finals where Steve Kerr had to sit him down, and in Memphis after he got ejected in that wild game one for the jersey pull on Brandon Clark. And he has, I think, at times needed a little bit of a reset or a little bit of a breather from maybe getting a little too wound up in some of these series. I think he was too wound up as far as the crowd and everything that was going on in Boston and all of the ugliness, and he had admitted as much on his own podcast that he was letting that impact him too much, and it was a raucous atmosphere. I think the Warriors were, and we've seen this with them, they play a little too angry, or like there's a little too much of a weight on them. And I think that was a theme through the first two games of this series, is for the most part, everything was a struggle. Even when they played well, it was a struggle, because you'd look up and you'd think, oh, they should be up 10 and they would be up 2, or, oh, they should be up 5 and they were down 4 somehow. And there was always this notion that they were playing uphill, trying to climb the mountain. So I'm with you as far as Draymond being able to watch the game at home and just get some fresh eyes on everything the Kings are doing, what the Warriors' game plan was, and how he can come back and add to it, because what works in one game in a playoff series doesn't necessarily work for the remainder of the series. There's the constant adjustments back and forth.
Well, and look, we'll never know because Draymond was ejected for the final, few minutes of game 2. But the fact that the Warriors couldn't get a stop on the last 9 of 11 possessions down the stretch of that game in the fourth quarter, I would imagine Draymond Green would be able to affect that a little bit. Who knows if the Warriors lose game 2 if he gets ejected? I think that's some of the frustration that fans are carrying with Draymond, knowing that game was winnable if he was still on the court. And so now game 3, they come out and they look like world beaters. Part of that is Sacramento couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from three-point range. Part of that was Domantas Sabonis had another bad game, and Kevon Looney was able to sort of neutralize him. And it didn't look like the Warriors missed Draymond Green, but that doesn't mean they're a better team without Draymond Green. And if he plays the final 7 minutes of that fourth quarter in game 2, this might be a 2-1 series in favor of Golden State. So I'm 100% with you. I do understand where maybe the prisoner of the moment has people thinking that the Warriors could do this without Draymond. In my opinion, and I think you're on the same page, JD, they were able to survive that game. They were able to win that game due to individual factors and the rest of the team stepping up, knowing the job that they had to do, knowing the position they would be in if they lost that game, more so than, hey, we're a better team without Draymond Green.
It was pretty incredible that without 2 of your best 3 defenders, maybe your top 2 defenders, I'd probably throw Wiggins in that category as far as Draymond and Wiggins and GP2, just in terms of guys that are playing the most minutes, that are the best defenders. Either way you slice it, for the Warriors to have their best defensive game of the series and slow down Sacramento essentially to a level that they hadn't been slowed down to all season, when they're routinely putting up 118 to 130 basically on a nightly basis.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a stunner. And, we've seen this with the Warriors in the past, where you do get up 2-0, you go on the road, and you can make the case that it was a missed opportunity for Sacramento to effectively end the series by going up 3-0. But it was the first road game for this group of young Kings. And traditionally, you get up 2-0, you go on the road, and game 3 is the freebie. Game 3 is the game that you do not have to get. And we saw the Warriors, I think, in the early going of their dynasty, that game 3 would be one that they would lose. Like, that's just to kind of look at the Celtics last night. They go into Atlanta. They've, for the most part, dominated the Hawks. It's game 3. And the Hawks get one. And so a lot of these series do play out that way. If I'm the Kings, that's what I'm trying to tell myself, that, hey, it doesn't matter, come back out. But I think the question is, as it relates to the first 2 games, and what did you see in game 3, and how does everything change again moving forward, the Warriors could make a hell of a case that they had control of game 1, let it slip away, let Fox get going down the stretch of that game, didn't win it, and really, other than the stretch run of the first 2 games, the Warriors' defense has been excellent in this series, top to bottom. Now, they haven't, again, been able to stop the Kings in the clutch in the 2 games that were close. That's a major problem if that continues, because the Warriors are going to have to win a close game or 2, I think, of the final 3 that they're going to have to win in this series. But in the big picture, grand scheme of things, I think the Warriors have to be happy with their defense. The question and the plotting, all right, step by step, is, are they figuring their offense out a little bit as this series continues?
Yeah, and I think that's a big reason why there was no sense of panic after game 2. Now, guys are going to come out and publicly state that if there is, but the second half of game 1 got away from you 71 points from the Kings because of offensive rebounds. Game 2, outside of the second quarter, in which they scored 40 or 41, the Warriors were pretty good defensively until the last 5.5 minutes of the game.
It's just been these little stretches. You're right. Like beginning of the second quarter in game 2, it was late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter in game 1, and then Fox started doing his thing, and he's tough to stop when he gets that momentum. But for lengthy stretches of this series, the Warriors' defense has been more than what it's going to need to be to win the series. Now, again, you still got to play much better defense if you do find yourself in those close games, and the Warriors were unable in the first two games to give themselves enough separation to where they had a little cover. You almost have to give yourself a little pad against the Kings because they've been so good in the clutch, 5 points or less in the final 5 minutes with that just complete outlier of an offensive rating, 10.2 points better than the next team in the league.
Well, and it's also kind of been a running theme for the Warriors. Like, they have struggled, especially in kind of those last minute, 2 minute of quarters throughout this season. And it hasn't been the entire regular season, but we've seen plenty of examples, JD, of a mini 5-0, 6-0 spurt from a team to either get back into the game or extend their lead at the end of a half or the third quarter. And that flipped a little bit in Game 3 in favor of the Warriors. You see Dante DiVincenzo's Steph Curry impression at the end of the first quarter. Kevon Looney's offensive rebound kicked out to Steph for the three right before the half to put him up 12 where it would have been 9. Those are possessions that the Warriors maybe allowed to get stolen from them in the first two games of this series. And in Game 3, for whatever reason, I would reckon to believe a little more focus was on their side down in those situations being the reason, but they got those wins in those possessions, and I think that's a big reason why they were not only able to separate, but then control the pace and the game when they wanted to.
All right, he's Evan Giddings. I'm John Dickinson. 888-957-9570. It's Warriors This Week here on a Saturday. We're with you until 1 o'clock here on 95.7 The Game. Appreciate everybody who's watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. Hello to everybody there as we come to you on 95.7 The Game. All right, let's get to the phones. 888-957-9570. Let's get it tipped off this morning with Will in Berkeley here on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, Will? Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you guys? I love what you said, JD, about sort of their mindset because I think they were sort of irritated by Sacramento. And, we normally see the Warriors play with joy. And I think for a long time they didn't have the joy going on to road games. And I think right now they're sort of trying to figure out how to get back that joy. And so it is a growth mindset for them to sort of feel like maybe it's an FU mindset. Maybe it's like I'm going to get mine, because I got 4 rings or whatever. But I think they need to get back to basics with playing with some sort of like rhythm or some sort of like groove to the game, because right now they're sort of like getting irritated by this. The games have not been that big. They haven't been blowouts. They've been like 7, 8 point, kind of stances. And so I think, if they can get over the hump and play with a little bit more joy, I think they would get right back in the groove.
Thanks for the call, Will. They're starting to find it. I think the home cooking helped that. I think the weight, not having the weight of playing a close game, I thought, as much as you couldn't expect that to be a key, playing shorthanded, it wound up being something that they could do. And I think just the deep breath of, all right, fourth quarter, don't have to sweat out if De'Aaron Fox is going to try to take this thing over. It's going to be 2-1. You got through the Draymond thing, Peyton's illness. Hopefully he's good to go for tomorrow. And then you're able to build a little bit of not momentum, not in that it really relates to the next game, but you're just feeling better about yourself going into that game, knowing that you've got to bring it at that same level one more time.
No, and I think that's a good clarification. The momentum in game compared to momentum game to game, which is kind of a fallacy in playoff basketball. There is something to be said for a team figuring out what the other wants to do and then being able to utilize that. And that's been a common theme for the Warriors throughout their playoff runs. When they have figured out a team, they have typically gone on to control that series and, quite frankly, finish it quickly. They did it last year in the first round against Denver. They did it in the conference finals against Dallas. And then, of course, after they fell down 2-1 and got that Game 4 win in Boston, they kind of ran away with the rest of the series. That is a common theme of these Warriors of the past. But for this team, every single game has just been so difficult to figure out that, I think a big part of it was the fact that there was no clutch time, as we're talking about in Game 3. who knows? If it comes down the stretch of Game 4, Sacramento might feel more comfortable in that situation, even if it's on the road, because they have won those games all year long.
Yes, they have.
And that's something that the Warriors, unfortunately, cannot say as much as Sacramento, even though they have that championship pedigree. They didn't look like they were able to get stops when they needed to in Games 1 and Game 2, with or without Draymond Green and Gary Payton II. So I'm not necessarily saying that the Sacramento Kings have a clutch time advantage, but it does feel like if we're looking at kind of the inexperience versus experience, this season is where the Kings have cohesively been able to put things together when they've needed to, more than the Warriors have.
I think it's fair to just put the rat on the table and say that the Kings right now do have a clutch time advantage. They were better in those situations in the regular season, and there have been 2 opportunities in the first 2 games of this series, albeit in their building, which I think helped their focus, intensity, and in particular defensive effort. Like that was one thing that I bookmarked, and the Warriors missed a lot of shots, and I thought the Kings played pretty good defensively. It was more the Warriors were more patient, I thought, in Game 3, less frenetic. But I think Sacramento's ability to play so physically and to sustain it for a 48-minute game, a lot of that, I think, was just off of the emotion that was in that building, and they didn't quite have the same push at Chase without 18,000 of their fans egging them on, so to speak.
Yeah, and the Warriors got a huge boost from Chase Center, as they have all year. I mean, they've kind of sputtered down the stretch of road games and had some lulls on road trips, but they've always written the ship at Chase Center. And I think that's what people expected them to do in Game 3 and what I expect them to do in Game 4 to even this series. In a way, it's kind of what you mentioned off the top of the show, JD. It's like nothing's happened yet, according to Steve Kerr. Every team has held serve, and the series doesn't really start until someone breaks through that barrier. Neither team has done it thus far, even though I would argue the Warriors have gotten closer to doing that than Sacramento. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're down 2-1 in the series. Whether you feel like you had a chance in Game 1 or Game 2, you lost the game.
Yeah, you lose a close game tomorrow and you're down 3-1. Nobody cares whether you almost won 3 times, and the one game you won was a blowout. You're up against it, and you got to win twice in a building that you haven't been able to win once in yet to this point in the series. So a lot still to happen. Game 4 tomorrow, 888-957-9570. Let's keep it rolling here with Tyrone in Oakland on Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, JD. Hey, you kind of mentioned what looked better in the last game, and that was they were less frenetic. And everyone's been talking about Draymond's influence in terms of spacing, but I think it has to do with pace as well. His main strength in the offense is the way that he pushes the pace. And I think that he has made the adjustment that they can't do that anymore. The vets are too old. They can't go at that pace effectively. And then the younger guys just don't know how. So he's stuck in between doing what he does best, but that's not what the team needs anymore. And I think that's kind of gets to the bigger issue of how the vets are adjusting to their new situation. That's going to be a talk for the offseason. But for me, you were right. They were less frenetic.
Yeah, no, thanks for the call. They played slower but looked faster. Yeah. And the Kings are not good enough defensively to slow the Warriors down without the help. Like, that's just the reality. And I tip my cap to their intensity and competitiveness level, but the unforced turnovers and the bad shots, and yes, the extra possessions on the other end that the Kings are able to get. The Kings are not good enough defensively without help in this series. And that's one thing. And, I asked Steve Kerr about it the other day when I was filling in for Willard, and he was on Willard and Dibbs, that show, about the turnovers. And he said, watching the film, they really are unforced, which kind of it put in the back of my mind that there is more of an opportunity for this team to clean that up than meets the eye. And then they were able to go do it in Game 3, and it looked different because they were able to get into their offense. And even though they didn't shoot the 3-ball well, they were able to get enough layups and easy buckets. And the layup line, when the Warriors got into their offense in the first 2 games, was right there. Like, there were times in both of those games where the Kings couldn't stop anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that look, Steve Kerr said it before Game 3 when he quoted John Wood and said, "Be quick, but don't hurry." And I think that fell into 3 separate areas that flipped the script from Game 2 and honestly Game 1 to Game 3. And that's the offensive rebounds that killed them in Game 1. You're looking at the turnovers that killed them in Game 2. And second chance points, which were honestly aplenty for Sacramento in Games 1 and Game 2. All 3 of those areas the Warriors corrected and were significantly better than Sacramento in Game 3. Some of that is, the ball bouncing the right way, some long rebounds the Warriors are able to get. Some of that is Kevon Looney just outworking anyone down low between Sabonis, Len, Barnes, whoever is down there. Some of it's hitting shots. Some of that is the Kings missing shots. But the Warriors in Games 1 and 2, in my opinion, didn't capitalize when the Kings had their lulls, when they weren't shooting the ball well.
No doubt. And the Warriors,
especially off the rip.
The Kings capitalized.
Every time.
They are better. They are the best team in the league at hitting you with a 6-0 run off of one mistake. They'll hit a 3, one mistake, they'll hit another 3. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, it was an 8-point game, now it's a 2-point game. They're the best team in the league at doing that, which plays into the Warriors, as you mentioned earlier, who are the worst team in the league at giving that kind of thing up.
Yeah, the mini runs have killed them all year, and it's because now more than ever, and especially against a team like Sacramento, who's a great offensive team, they cannot get as many stops when they need to. They can, and they've been able to force some tough shots, some contested looks that the Kings have just made better shots on. But I think that defensively, the Warriors, at least in Game 3, and it. Not because of the absence of Draymond, but I think they realize that they have to tempt the Kings into getting jump shot happy. And the Kings have made 3-pointers all year. They haven't through the first 3 games of this series. But the first place my mind went to, JD, was last year in the finals where the Boston Celtics were a really good 3-point shooting team. And we kept waiting for that 3-point barrage game to come. And it never did. That's something that I'm going to keep an eye on for Game 4, 5, and hopefully beyond if you're the Warriors.
All right, he's Evan Giddings. I'm John Dickinson. We'll pause here. 888-957-9570. More phone calls and 707 on the Comcast Business text line. I'm gonna read the text. You dared me that I wouldn't. That's all straight ahead. 95.7 The Game.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising. After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went...
All right, John Dickinson, Evan Giddings. Evan sitting in for Whitey Gleason. We appreciate that here on this Saturday as Game 4 of the first round of the NBA playoffs. Warriors-Kings tomorrow right here on 95.7 The Game. That's a 12:30 tip. So make sure you get there early. Stop by Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. I'll be on the air at 11 o'clock. Have a Kolsch with your buddy JD and get yourself nice and ready to head into Chase Center and make an imprint on the game. The crowd was terrific on Thursday night, and one of the themes of the first 3 games of this series has been, hey, how many road fans are going to travel? And that's been a non-story to this point.
No, it's been very, very few. And I wasn't too surprised that there weren't a lot of Warriors fans up in Sacramento. One, it was pretty expensive from what I was seeing. Number 2, I don't know how much urgency there was from Warriors fans in the first round. Of course, compared to Sacramento, this is the first time they've been here in a long time. They deserve to pack that place out. They deserve to have the energy. And I think there's a lot of Warriors fans that were saying, we'll have a chance to see them in the second round, the Western Conference Finals, because we've always been here, right? We'll have plenty of chances to see our dubs. And I think that also, maybe applied a little bit to Chase in the sense that the Kings knew that they're going to have Game 5. There's going to be another chance to see them. And I think both teams' fan bases are just kind of letting the other do their thing.
Yeah, and I also, maybe I'm giving Warrior fans too much credit with this next statement, but there was a thought I had that, to be perfectly honest, maybe the Warrior fans just out of respect, were like, you know what, we're going to let y'all have your moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because the Warriors fan base would know probably better than any other fan base what the Kings fan base has gone through over the last almost 2 decades, because they basically went through it from 1994 until 2012, 2013.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember what it was like the first time the Warriors made the playoffs in 13, and I was, pretty young at the time, and I was hyped and I was excited, and a few of my friends were at the game. I was in college, so I wasn't able to go, but everyone was locked in that was a Warriors fan to that game, and that was the hottest ticket in town. It wasn't. I know it was Denver that they were playing in the first round in 2013, as opposed to now having an I-80 series. But I hear what you're saying about the respect, and maybe both sides are, maybe less inclined to try to invade.
All bets are off on that now, by the way. Like, that's one of those things that might have been cute to say coming into the series, but at this point, I think it feels like it's gotten a little personal back and forth between the fan bases, more than maybe I would have anticipated.
Yeah, that was something that I thought, like, I understand where both fan bases feel a bit maybe like they got to get into it with the other, but I also would have thought, because like you said, with the connection between the two, that there would be a little more cordial communication between two sides, especially on social media. It's like, I mean, if the Warriors weren't in the playoffs, JD, I would be rooting for the Sacramento Kings to advance as far as they can. And I imagine there's a lot of Kings fans, if they weren't in the playoffs, that would also say, hey, the Warriors, look, they're a NorCal team, and I know they've been here before, but don't mind seeing them advance. But now there seems to be a little more aggression between the two sides.
Yeah, I wonder about that now. I think there are a lot of Warrior fans that might have thought that way going into the series.
Oh, not anymore.
But I think now it's to a point where, no, like all bets are off as far as maybe rooting.
Like, there's Warriors fans might be rooting for the Lakers potentially if God forbid, of course, if the Kings win the series.
Yeah, it's just it just seems like it's gotten a little more personal than would have been anticipated. But I think all in good fun. And yeah, I think it also stems from the fact that where it has gotten a little personal is that I think coming into the series, I think the Kings fans are like, we're probably not winning this series. But you win game 1 and you win game 2, and you start putting your chest out a little bit and popping your collar a little bit, and you start feeling it. Like, hey, our guys can win this series now. And so I think that changes the dynamics a little bit, and you look at how poorly the Warriors played, and the eye test was not kind to the Warriors in the first 2 games of the series. And so I think that level of confidence that wasn't there a week ago right now before the series had tipped off has started to seep in, and rightfully so. I mean, fans are going to be happy about their team playing well. And then I think the Warrior fans were like, hey, we like what you've done. We respect you, but we're winning this series. And then now they're threatened from game 1 and pissed off from game 2, and then everything that happened in between game 2 and game 3. And so I think that's where it's created this cocktail of hostility, which personally I'm all for.
Yeah, no, it creates an exciting series. I think it creates an exciting environment because there's a little bit of doubt on both sides now. I think there's a little bit of tensity that's creeped into both of these home games, the one tomorrow and, of course, the one on game 3. Like, I understand the beginning point of this with the Kings fans feeling happy and excited, and then you win game 1 and it's jubilation outside and you're lighting the beam. In game 2, the same situation, and then there becomes an idea of, hey, like, maybe we actually we can win this series. And I'm sure there were some Kings fans that believed they could before the series, but there's a lot more now. And then on the Warriors side, you're saying, well, who are these guys? I mean, there's a lot of that as well, even though the Warriors were in that situation a little over a decade ago.
There's a lot of how are they doing it, I think, from the Warriors fan point of view, and the truth is they have been doing it the way that they did it in the first couple games all year. Just a majority of people in the Bay probably didn't see it and didn't know, or didn't think if they did that it was sustainable. And it has been sustainable. At least it was in those first couple of games.
No, you've watched every single Kings game this year. I haven't certainly watched as much Kings basketball, but there was a little bit of that in games 1 and 2, like, all right, when is this going to change? Like, when are the Warriors going to take over? And it never happened.
And they just, Goo was talking about it yesterday. Like, I'm looking at this series, guys.
How did they get 2?
How did they get 2? And it's like, well, that's like they won 20 games this year, where you were like, how'd they win that game? And to their credit, clutch play. They make their own breaks. They're never dead in games, even though it looks like they're dead in games sometimes. They always kind of come back and make that run, and they've been able to do that a lot. Like, that for them is not something that's off-brand. It's very much on-brand.
And it's been a little on-brand the other direction for the Warriors this year, not in past years, but individually in the regular season, especially on the road, they have had trouble closing out games.
The things that the Kings do well when they're on are things that really hurt the Warriors when the Warriors are not playing well. And I think that's where this series set up to definitely be a close one and a long one, regardless of who ends up coming out on top. All right, 888-957-9570. I'm going to get to that text message that I promised from the 707 that I was dared I wouldn't read. But first, let's go back to the phones. Telmo in San Francisco up first here on 95.7 The Game, this segment. What's going on, Telmo?
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Doing well.
So, just kind of
Telmo, we got to put you on hold. Telmo, we're going to put you on hold. And, yeah, Craig, pick up with Telmo. Bad connection. We'll run you back. Appreciate you holding on as long as you have. We'll sneak in Mitch in Jersey next year. What's going on, Mitch?
Johnny, Evan, how you guys doing? Thanks for taking my call. Hope it's a nice day over there, too.
Oh, yeah, beautiful day.
Fantastic.
We're getting into the 70s out here, Mitch, which is it's a beautiful thing.
Foreign territory.
Yeah, I visited San Francisco in May one time. It was pretty cold. Back in the day before I met my wife. I say Clay and Steph going to have to come up big because I know I said this last week, and I agree with you. I guess I'm going back more than 10 years when Steph and Clay first got drafted. I was in consecutive years, great draft choices. Well, that's how finally the Kings have come along, and Northern California's got some good teams. They seem to be losing teams, the Raiders, now the A's, Maybe the A's should just share the park with the Giants in the meantime. It could have done it a long time ago, but sorry about another team that's leaving Oakland. But it's a great series, I think, so far. And you can't depend on Green. I think Green's a bit washed up.
All right, thanks for the call.
Which one?
JaMychal? JaMychal Green didn't play great the other night necessarily, but who cares? He got in there and he battled. He missed a three.
He did what they needed him to do.
He gave up an and one, but it just that's the whole kitchen sink mentality of it. Like, it wasn't really about the individual numbers and the rotation and the plus minus. If you'd stunk or hadn't played in the first couple games, you were probably going to get at least a little bit run in game 3 because the Warriors were so shorthanded. And I thought everybody that got on the court made a positive impact, and even JaMychal Green. I know he was talking about Draymond Green.
Yeah, no, you're right though. It was all hands on deck, and because of Draymond's absence, there's a lot more minutes to go around. So you were going to see JaMychal Green. I know fans maybe didn't want to see, but you were going to see Anthony Lamb, who had a block on Harrison Barnes. Like it was kind of that game where it felt like they pieced the bench together. And they got contributions from everyone. Dante DiVincenzo was great, 3 offensive rebounds. Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, who I'm sure we'll talk about, were able to contribute meaningful playoff minutes at the same time. I believe for the first time this postseason, that was a huge plus. And I'm sure being at home created a sense of comfort for all of those role players. Vice versa, you didn't see Malik Monk play as well as he did at home for Sacramento. Yeah. You didn't see the role players for the Kings play as well on the road. But as it pertains to Draymond Green, yes, in that game it didn't look like they missed him, but you didn't hear that from the way that they were speaking about his absence prior to.
Yeah, I'm looking at just the 3-point shooting from Malik Monk,
yikes,
Davion Mitchell, and Trey Lyles, who had all in some form killed the Warriors in the first 2 games, especially Monk and especially Trey Lyles. And I'm looking at, what is that? 0 for 8, 1 of 13. 1 of 13 from 3 for those 3 combined after they had been major factors in the first couple of games of the series. And Lyles basically had allowed the Kings to get away with getting nothing from Keegan Murray in the first now 3 games of this series. He's looked a little overwhelmed. and has become, we talked about the Warriors playables, and it looked after game 2 like the Warriors weren't. It looks like the Warriors may have found some playables in the end of game 2 and game 3 in Moses Moody in particular, and just the way that they made it the kitchen sink game like we're talking about. And the Kings maybe are having to look in the mirror, not on Lyles or Monk, but maybe on Keegan Murray, that they might have to go away from him. He hadn't played a lot because he hasn't played well, but even that is starting potentially to even up a little bit. Let's roll to Tim in San Jose next here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Tim.
Morning, gents. How are you?
Doing well.
Good, man.
So, you guys were talking earlier about this the rivalry between Sacramento and the Bay, and I think I figured it out where it all started. Started when E40 got kicked out in game 1, man. As soon as E40 got kicked out, social media blew up. People started disowning, people from the Bay that started disowning Sac. Sac folks started saying they were never repping the Bay anyway, and it just kind of went downhill from there.
I think you pinpointed it, Tim. What else you got, Tim?
I said, man, I'm looking forward to this game. I think that we found a little bit of magic yesterday, and eliminating, being without Draymond. Maybe we can incorporate a little bit more of that and get back to Sacramento side 2-2.
Thanks, Tim. Tim in San Jose checking. I think Tim pinpointed the moment in which it all turned. I think the E40 thing in game 1 was absolutely a thing. Mm-hmm. I think the Kings fans starting to feel like they had an opportunity after they won the first game. And then, of course, everything that happened with Draymond and Sabonis at the end of game 2 and the iconic image of Draymond on the scoreboard in Sacramento smiling as, I don't know, a couple hundred Kings fans are giving him the double bird.
Yeah, it certainly didn't help, let's put it that way. And especially with E40 getting removed and the alleged reasons behind it all, creating some separation between the two. But I'll say this, if you think that NorCal and the Bay Area are the same, I can't help you. All right, I'll just tell a story. Go off to college, first day, I'm with my teammates, and so I played baseball in college, dropped, and then first day, initiation, someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm trying to meet new teammates. And say, "Oh, yeah, I'm from the Bay Area." He goes, "Me too." I say, "Oh, where? Yeah, you're South Bay, at East Bay, San Francisco. Where are you from?" He says, "Sacramento." And we both look at each other, and I say, "I'm from El Cerrito." They're 2 hours apart. They're not close.
You might as well have been from Indianapolis at that point.
You might as well have been from Reno. They are such a large place. There's such a chasm between the two, both geographically as well as culturally. And I just think that fans, even though there's some appreciation for where both franchises have been, there is that geographical divide to the point where, if E40 gets tossed out, and if Draymond Green's screaming at Kings fans, there is going to be this added sense of aggression between the two sides. I'm glad it hasn't spilled over and gotten physical by any means. But to your point earlier, and from our first segment, Jay, there's going to be a little kind of rivalry building that was already dormant. And really, the only reason was because the Kings weren't good when the Warriors were good, and then the Warriors also weren't good when the Kings were good back in the day.
And I do think the fact that the Warriors have been what they've become over the last decade, with the Kings in some ways as bad as they've ever been, even with Vivek Ranadive taking over and the new arena, which is terrific. I think there is still, I do think it's natural for there to be a little bit of jealousy as to, oh, wait a minute, we're still stuck in the Drex here, and now this team that was basically a bigger market version of us is a freaking dynasty. And so I think that does play a role. And because there were times where, and I may have a unique perspective, there were times where I think a lot of people in Sacramento were kind of pulling for the Warriors and, hey, like the style of play and whatever. I think as that time went on, and the Durant shift and different things, I do think Kings fans maybe became a little bit more like the rest of the country in that respect. Yeah, no, to your point about the mid-market, so to speak, the Warriors were that team, the little engine that did and then became a dynasty. I think a lot of teams are understandably a little
they want that, right? Like the Kings were in a place the Warriors were, and now they're trying to build something, and credit to them. Hopefully they're able to. But the Warriors skipped, I think, in many people's minds, a lot of steps to becoming a dynasty. Sure, they won their first championship, but then they leveled up and got Durant, and that drew the ire from the entire league, from the entire country, from all basketball fans. And so now, even though they're on the other side of that, and last year's championship sort of affirmed what they did, I think, before the Kevin Durant era, I think there's still a lot of people that are saying, hey, like what you guys were able to accomplish should not happen. That isn't the way that things work in the NBA. And they're a little bit jealous of that. I think that's fair, and I hope that doesn't offend Sacramento fans.
888-957-9570. They also view their team as an up-and-comer and maybe somebody that's going to be pretty good for the next decade as well. And so there is that caught in the timeline of maybe the Warriors are falling off. Maybe we're going to be the new hot thing, which I think plays a role in it, and we'll see how this series shakes out. Duck Sauce, San Jose, next here on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, Duck Sauce?
Hey, what's going on, JD? Evan, thanks for taking my call. Good morning to you guys.
Got it.
Back at
you. A couple things. The first thing is, last couple of days I've been hearing all these people talking about Draymond, needs to come off the bench now. I don't think that's realistic. Like, I don't see that happening. But to JD's point earlier, I thought it was a good point. They can't slow us down all the way without us shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit. So I think he does need to take a step back and look at, I can't try to hit the home run pass every time or thread the needle every time if there's a chance we could turn the ball over. Because if we protect the ball, I just don't think they're going to be able to slow us down enough, kind of to what JD said. And the other thing, I think Monk kind of came down to earth. I mean, as good as he's been, there's a reason he's a journeyman in this league. It's because he's unreliable. He's inconsistent. And that's going to continue to happen. Now, he may have another big game, but it's very possible he's going to have a terrible game. And the last thing I am concerned is I don't know if Herter is going to continue to shoot this poorly, because as good as our intensity was, I still thought he got a lot of open looks, and he just couldn't hit nothing. And it was to the point where they started running action for him, around 17 feet just to get him going. Like, they were running curls inside the three-point line just to see if it could get him going by hitting a closer shot. So I'm hoping that, that he stays cold, but I'm a little worried about that. That's all I got, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Duck Sauce. Yeah, Malik Monk he's an erratic player. He might go for 35. He might be 1 for 9. Like, that's just reality, and you don't know what it's going to be. To this point, it's been better at home and bad on the road. That could just as easily flip. I know he had the monster game of his season in that 176 to 175 game, so he can do it on the road. They won that game against the Clippers down in L.A. As far as Herter goes, and I mentioned this to Steiny and Goo yesterday in watching Mike Brown talk about his team and their three-point shooting through the first 3 games of the series, it does remind me of Warriors playoff series past, and not that the Kings deserve the benefit of the doubt at the level that the Warriors would get with 2 of the greatest shooters of all time in Steph and Clay, but the tone of we're getting good looks, eventually they're going to go down, and it could be an avalanche once they do. That is the at least the message he's trying to give to his team to keep them confident. But I just remember all these series where the Warriors struggled for a couple of games. What's going on with the shot? These guys are not making shots. And then the Warriors would have a couple of games after that, at least one, where they'd hit 23s, and it would completely change the complexion a little bit of a series. I do think you have to hold out for Herter's part of that, the Kings being due for that three-point make game in the 18 to 22 range, but so are the Warriors. The Warriors have had a couple of 16s, but inefficient 16s.
Yeah, no, I think look, the Kings right now are shooting 27% from 3 in the series. Like they're
much better than that.
They are much better than that. And Kevin Herter's much better than that. He's been interesting to watch because coming into this series, if you're looking at the experience versus inexperienced conversation between these two sides, Kevin Herter outside of Barnes is the only guy that's been deep in the postseason. He was with the Hawks a couple of years ago when they made it to the conference finals. Like, he's the only real guy that has experience in these situations. He's also a career 38.5% three-point shooter, and he can't find water if you fell out of a boat right now. That, I don't know if it's going to, I would assume it's going to change, but I also think that if you're looking at the inexperience for Sacramento, I think that three-point shooting is where it shows a little bit. Now, it's been more drastic than I thought it was going to be, but some of those numbers are going to come down. The palms get a little bit sweatier. You're going to miss some of those open looks, and you're a little more tense, especially on the road. But like I said at the beginning of the show, JD, it's like last year, I think we were expecting the Boston Celtics to have a game where the avalanche of threes came, and it never did. I was expecting it to be either Game 5, maybe Game 6, and it never happened.
Well, if it doesn't happen,
they're dead.
The Warriors are winning the series. And
the Kings are dead.
Yeah. If it doesn't happen, the Warriors are winning the series. Like, the Kings are going to have a game where they make close to 20 at an efficient rate if they're going to win the series. Now, it might be tomorrow, and then all of a sudden the Warriors are in trouble if they can't either match it or do enough other things to find a way to win the game anyway, as they've been able to do at home this season, but not really on the road. All right, 1 hour in the books, 888-957-9570. PG and Stewart, you guys are coming up right out of the break. It's John Dickinson and Evan Giddings. It's Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising.
We're with you until 1 o'clock. 888-957-9570. Game 4 tomorrow at Chase Center, 12:30 tip. So make sure you're in the area early and stop by and say hi. Harmonic Brewing, 11 o'clock. I'll be on the air with Warriors Live. We've got Warriors Live and Warriors Wrap-Up both tomorrow before and after the game from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. It is tremendous.
Something light before the game, something perhaps a little heavier after the game.
Maybe a little heavier after the game, and the beauty of the afternoon start is you truly can make a day of coming out and cheering on the Warriors, and after the game, it's still going to be that mid to late afternoon time, so you can put one away.
And
after
I think it's
the game
supposed to be looking like this today. 65, 70 outside, clear skies, maybe a couple clouds scattered down near Chase Center.
Yeah, nothing turns San Francisco up like 70 plus.
Oh,
it's like I always say NBA playoff basketball is like a different sport compared to regular season basketball. San Francisco it's a different city.
That's a good take.
It's a different city when it's 70 plus in a very, very, very good way, Evan.
Oh, absolutely. Look, t-shirts, shorts, and the sundresses come out, and everyone's down near the beach, and especially when there's some lack of wind this weekend as well. It is perfect conditions out here in San Francisco. Just like Game 3 presented some perfect conditions on the court for the Golden State Warriors.
All right, let's get back to the phones. Stewart is the longest hold on the board in Oakland. What's going on, Stewart?
What's going on, guys?
What's happening?
I got 2 things for you this afternoon. First of all, I wanted to address a little fan-to-fan debate that you guys were having, and I think it bears worth noting that the Warriors have been the most hated team in the league out here, and on the road, everyone's standing up trying to beat the Warriors, and the Kings are the closest team looking in on the greatness that we've enjoyed here in the Bay Area, all the championships, the parades, and the rings. And though we might have respect for them, knowing what they're going through right now in their playoff drought, they have never experienced what we've got. So I can't really be mad at them for hating a little bit, for preying on our downfall.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Especially when the downfall coincides with them advancing.
Yeah, exactly. Second of all, I want to address the Draymond hate a little bit. And I think what people forget with the Game 4 of last year's finals, with Curry's 40-point performance, they forget that Draymond also had a big comeback game then too, because he really got handled in that loss at Chase, and then especially in the first game back at Boston. But he really bounced back in those last 2 away games at Boston and had big performances. Look for Draymond to have a big Game 4 tomorrow. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, I think Draymond's going to be back in a major way tomorrow. Like, that's something that I'm fully confident in as I look at this thing from the Warriors' point of view. I personally think people have made way too big a deal of, hey, Draymond being out is why the Warriors did what they did in Game 3. And look, it played out that way. I mean, maybe it helped change the energy for that game, but it's not something where I would think for a second, oh, hey, that's the way the Warriors have to proceed moving forward without Draymond. It changes the rotations and all of that, but I still view it more, Evan, like the Warriors survived Game 3 without him. Others stepped up, but it's no way to live for the remainder of the series. You need him back and in the fold and doing the things that he does well, which help in some ways make the Warriors unstoppable when they're cooking.
Yeah, when Draymond Green's at his best, so are the Warriors. I think the only implication of the suspension and maybe how the Warriors performed in his absence is something that you'll talk about in the offseason. Like that's a summer conversation. Yeah. But as it pertains to Game 3, everyone stepped up, including the head of the Snake, Stephen Curry. I know Klay Thompson didn't have his best shooting game. Andrew Wiggins was the second best player on the floor outside of, maybe you could say Kevon Looney, who was amazing in his 20-rebound effort. But Stephen Curry took the offensive brunt on his shoulders, dominated that game on the offensive side of the court. Looney dominated the glass. The Warriors took care of the basketball. They didn't give Sacramento any form of life in the form of extra possessions. And I think that Draymond Green as we're talking about in the first hour, JD, is going to see that blueprint and say, where can I affect that in a positive fashion? We're talking about it during the commercial break, whether it be slowing down, whether it be not trying to get sped up by Sacramento. This is a Warriors team that plays at a high pace. They're in the top 3 in the league in terms of possessions per game. Sacramento, that benefits them in this series, in my opinion, because we saw them in the half court struggle a little bit. The Warriors did certainly dare them to take shots, and they missed. But I think that Draymond Green and the reintegration process is going to be one that we'll look back on at the end of Game 4 and say, sure, they won Game 3 and they ran away with it, but if they win in Game 4, you'll look at Draymond Green as a necessity to them going further than just this first-round series.
He needed to take a play off, and you can view it that way in hindsight because the Warriors won, and it didn't ultimately cost them the series, him being out for Game 3, but now to me you can look at it as, hey, he got to take a play off and just calm the hell down and be able to watch what needs to be done here moving forward as this series progresses. PG in Oakland next on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, PG? PG, you there?
Playoff P.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, what's up, PG?
Hey, now. Hey, yeah, I wanted to touch on what you guys were talking about, like some of the differences between Sacramento and the Bay. The Bay's 510, 415. We do some 925, maybe even a little 408. We're not doing 916. We're not doing that.
No 530 either. No 530 either.
RIP the 510.
We're not doing none of that. Listen. I'm a season ticket holder. I have a friend of mine I went to college with who's a Kings ticket holder. I go up there to see the Memphis game several months back, and they literally had garbage night. It was like garbage. Whoever collects their garbage up there was sponsoring the game, I guess. And they were giving out garbage bags. Like garbage bags. Recycle garbage bags to all the fans. Look under your seat. We got garbage bags for you. If I'm lying, call me out on air. I put that on everything. That actually happened. They did line dancing during the halftime show.
I get down on that.
And they're ringing the cowbells. Man, for those that don't know, there's a huge cultural divide between what happens up in Sacramento and what happens here in the Bay. Do not get it twisted. Man, that's Trump country, man. We're not hearing that.
All right, appreciate it, PG.
Yeah,
it's really not at the level that people think.
I actually think it's turned in the opposite direction more recently than
it. And here's the thing. I'll level it out this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more Bay Area light than people think. And look, as far as and I don't know, I didn't happen to be at that game that PG was referencing with the garbage teams have stupid partnership things all the time. Like, it sounds like it was a partnership deal. Like, hey, Waste Management bought some time, so we got to give them a bunch of run during a game, which is pretty silly and something that can be thrown back at you. Craig, you got a little action on that?
Well, just not only that, but this line dancing. I remember Sky Point, Saddle Rack, and Fremont used to be the spot.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You can hear Tupac go right into Garth Brooks.
I can confirm that via some ladies. Yeah. I never experienced it firsthand.
Saddle Rack was the spot,
but I can confirm that multiple female sources confirm that, and I don't even have to check with them.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and besmirch line dancing. That is a ton of fun. But, I mean, Sacramento fans could also make the same case the other side that the Warriors now in San Francisco are maybe a little more bougie than they used to be.
For sure. And look, Sacramento is more Bay Area light than people think, but there is a little hint of Reno in there at times.
No doubt.
That's probably the best way to explain it. And look, for those who don't know, I'm from Sacramento. For those who don't know, or originally grew up there, went to college there.
Behind enemy lines.
It's not the extreme that PG tried to point.
No, but I do think that call is a little indicative
without getting political.
No, sure. But as far as sports are concerned, I think that is indicative of kind of a divide between the fan bases, whereas you were talking about before this series, they were a little aligned. Like, you want to beat the other team. You want your team to advance. Sac's had a great season. The Warriors trying to defend their championship. But now, after the way the first two games have played out with E40 getting run and Draymond Green inciting the crowd and then the Warriors coming back and defending home court, it does feel like there is more animosity between the fan bases as sports are concerned.
Edward in San Carlos next here, 888-957-9570. What's going on, Edward?
Scissor hands.
Edward, you there, brother? Edward going once.
Night-night.
All right, bye-bye, Edward. Robin in San Francisco. I should have just gone to Robin first anyway. What's up, Robin?
Hi, you guys. How you doing? You know what? I call for one thing, and then I hear all these discussions. I just want to say real quickly that I have nothing against Sacramento. It's just geographically not part of the Bay. That's all.
For sure.
You know? And so that's what I take. That's basically what I take pride in. And I've said it on my Facebook page, you know, to all the outsiders, and I'm talking about across country, you know, for those who are geographically challenged, Sacramento is not part of the Bay Area. They were calling it the Bay Area Showdown. I was like, where are these people from? Just like I don't like the pictures of the Warriors that you see, and it has the Golden Gate Bridge behind it. And I often wonder why, because they didn't cross the Golden Gate Bridge. They crossed the Bay Bridge. But maybe it's because Golden Gate Bridge is synonymous with San Francisco. I don't know, but that also irks me as well as San Fran and all the rest of the stuff that sports people do, which leads me to why I called in JD. You had said something that I swear it had stuck in my head, JD. I cannot watch games without saying to myself, you don't know anything about Sacramento. You ain't been watching Sacramento. And that's what you had said about, you're going to get a lot of people who claim they know this and this about Sacramento, but they have not watched any games of Sacramento. Charles Barkley comes to mind when he said the other day he has the Kings because of their speed, and that Clay, Steph, Looney, and even Wiggins, they can't keep up. They don't have the speed. They're too old. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how many games has Charles Barkley actually won based off the Kings, watching the Kings to make that type of statement. And that's all I have for you this morning. Thanks to you, I can watch the game with my nose turned up and said, you don't know anything about the Kings. Bye.
Appreciate it, Robin. In some ways, I've used that to give them credit in this series, but I think it does play both ways. I thought the Kings, they didn't play well. They didn't shoot well. The Warriors were the more forceful team. There is a thought that as this thing goes on, because we've seen this happen so many different times, where as the Warriors have gotten older, the thought is, well, younger teams are going to be able to wear them down. And I think eventually it would happen. I wonder if the Kings, even though they are the younger team, can keep playing with the Warriors if the Warriors play more buttoned up. Like, how often have we thought, hey, boy, it doesn't look good, but by game 6, game 7, all of a sudden the Warriors seem to get stronger as some of these series where they're challenged go on, and the opposition looks like they can't quite match it, and you see it in field goal percentage a lot of the time. You see it in more defensive lapses as the Warriors figure some things out offensively. It's just, again, maybe this is the one when it's all said and done where it flips, but the Warriors have been able to, I think, get stronger and figure things out in some of these series, which we don't know that they have because it's one game that they've won. Tomorrow tells a little bit more of that story, and the games beyond that if they come to fruition. But that was something I bookmarked in that, hey, the Warriors looked a little faster. The Kings looked they looked a little tired, I thought, in some of the shooting, and I'll even say this, I thought they looked a little nervous in all 3 games at the beginning in terms of their shooting, which, like, at what point is that going to go away at any point where you come out tight in every game? Like, I get it in the first game, I get it even in the first road game, but if they don't figure that out, that's another area where I think the Warriors can pounce as this thing goes deeper.
Well, and they pounced in game 3. They didn't pounce in game 2 because they turned the ball over 9 times in the opening quarter.
Or it was tied at the end of the first quarter, even though the Kings were terrible shooting.
Exactly. And I think the unfamiliarity is, to Robin's point, it is something that I think a lot of people are dealing with. I know that you watch a ton of Kings basketball, JD, but I was talking to someone at the game on Thursday, and they told me the Kings were on national television twice If you include NBA TV games, they're on TV 5 times this season. So there wasn't a lot of opportunities for anyone to really see these Kings. And so I think there was some shock factor from the fan base as far as how they played, how buttoned up they look compared to Golden State. Meanwhile, if you're looking at Game 4, like I do think you can make the case that the Kings shooting should regress to the mean. You could also make the argument the Warriors shooting should regress to the mean. Outside of Stephen Curry, nobody's really shot the ball that well from 3. They're shooting 32% as a team. Andrew Wiggins hasn't been able to find the range from distance, even though I think physically he has looked about just as good as I could hope for coming off a 25-game absence. DiVincenzo, up until the last game, hadn't shot the ball well. Moses Moody, plug and play, has still missed a few open threes. They haven't got it going from deep, even though they're a team that in a lot of ways this year has relied on the 3 ball. And so the fact that they were able to win Game 3 without a barrage of deep 3-point shots, I thought was something to keep an eye on. And as far as Game 4, a few things that I'll be looking for is how tired the Kings look down the stretch, and if those legs get a little bit heavier, because you're talking about getting deeper into this series. And we've seen the Warriors just be able to figure things out when they've needed to in the past. They haven't done it as much this year, but they have done it at home. And that's, in a way, why I feel like this series is destined to go back to Sacramento tied at 2. Because if you just look at both of these teams and their body of work, the Kings have gotten it done in crunch time. There was crunch time in the first 2 games of the series. The Warriors have gotten it done at home. They did it in Game 3 with Draymond back in Game 4. I expect them to figure it out, and then it's a best of 3. You can never assume a win. I get that. But with the way that the Warriors looked and the way that the Kings tightened up a bit at Chase Center, this is going to be... Look, I think there's a reason why the Warriors are 7.5-point favorites tomorrow.
One of my keys to this series off of the first 2 games was make Sacramento feel like they're actually losing something. Make them feel as if there is something slipping away from them. And I think if it goes back to Sac 2-2, all of the pressure is on the Kings. Like they, at that point, I think somewhat lose the right to have their cake and eat it too, where they're the underdog team, but they also have home court advantage, and they were the team that had the bet. Like they're kind of living in both worlds, right? Oh, we're the underdogs. Nobody's giving us a chance, but we're at home and we're the more forceful team and jump out to the 2-0 lead. Like you go from 2-0 to 2-2, and that building to me is going to be a little tight in Game 5, especially if the Warriors are able to come out and play a buttoned-up game. Still might be close. Still might come down to who can execute down the stretch. But I think for the first time in the series, and we got a long way to go because the Warriors have to win tomorrow to make that come to fruition. But if they do, for the first time in the series, I think the Kings have to start thinking like, this is a real series. We had them. Now we don't. And there might be a little bit of doubt that starts to seep in as to whether or not they can actually pull this thing off from their standpoint.
Coming into this series, the Warriors were 2-1 favorites to win. After the second game, I think that's when the Kings started to really understand they are the 3 seed. Like they are the team that was better the entire year.
I think they started talking a little bit more like that too. Like that's one thing I've noticed. And look, De'Aaron Fox has been terrific. And I think you could say best player in the series to this point. He's got 2 games. Curry's got the 3rd game in his belt on that note. But I noticed even in Game 3, he was talking a little more, whether it was to Jordan Poole or whether it was to the officials. I know he had a little comment about not being a unanimous clutch player of the year. It's like, who cares? Like that was, I mean, he deserved to win the deal. But I think they got gassed up a little bit. I know I mentioned that to Steiny and Guru. I think they got gassed up for 3 days about you're in the champs' heads. You're doing. I think it's the thing that always does happen. It's the revisionist history of you win a couple of games and then you go back and you start plucking out all these little things, these little narratives that you can start to shape as major positives. When the reality is, hey, neither team really played all that well for good chunks of both of those first 2 games, but the Kings were able to do the job down the stretch. and that's why they had the lead.
I think if we're reading into this...
There was no dominance, is what I'm getting at. But I think when it's 2-0, and Draymond's out, I think it almost gets, in their little bubble, it starts to be viewed as dominance.
The Kings came into the series with more bulletin board material. They don't have as much of that now as they did after winning the first 2 games. There is less reason, I think, for them to be as less, interested, less, people believe more or believe less in the Kings entering this series than the Warriors. And I think they felt that. I think they channeled that, and it got them 2 victories. And I think now, because they are, or at least were, they held home court, they don't have as much of that juice behind them as the Warriors now do. And on the flip side, what if the Warriors kind of needed all season in big spots when they've been pressed up against the wall? They've needed something to kind of energize them. It's something to draw upon that can motivate them in certain spots. And whether, you don't want to be down 2-0, but in a way, I do think that the Warriors they didn't have as much of that coming into this series. There was less urgency from Golden State. And now, after going down 2-0, that manifested itself in Game 3, and it's a reason why I expect it to manifest itself in Game 4.
Big Dave in San Leandro. What's going on, Big Dave?
Hey, guys. Yeah, for sure. I definitely like seeing the intensity and focus from Game 3. I think going into the first 2 games, we definitely lacked it. What was annoying is just constantly hearing about, we know how it feels to be the Kings fans. They haven't made the playoffs this many years. Oh, yeah, whatever. It's a nice story. They're a great team. I feel like that intensity wasn't there. And for me personally, longtime Warrior fan, I don't want to see them in the playoffs. I don't care if they made the playoffs. The Kings fans, we hate the Kings. Going back to when Mitch Richmond was on that team, killed us every time. And I went to school up in the Sac area and in college, and that was during the whole, Weber days. And those fans would talk smack all the time when they were good. So, no, we're not friends with the Kings. I get it's different now. I know there's a lot of Warrior connections and whatnot, but going into the series, I thought we were just a little too soft in terms of just giving them their kudos and all that. That's out the door. So I think that the intensity and focus from Game 3 is going to be sustainable after everything that's gone down so far. I expect the Warriors to definitely win in 6. But I will say this, too, since I'm very familiar with that area. Back 20 years ago, yeah, it was definitely more country-like. But since then, there's tons of Bay Area transplants.
Yes.
It's a lot different. Got a lot of family from my wife's side who actually moved up there in the last 5 years. So it's changing. But I like your analogy. Yeah, it's a little bit Bay Area with a little bit of Reno. That's a good way to say it. But
appreciate it, Dave. Yeah, I think the Warriors. I don't know that the Warriors themselves were too locked in on what the opponent's story was. I think maybe the fans gave him a little benefit of the doubt. It's done now. Regardless, that's all freaking done now. Mm-hmm. It's on.
Oh yeah, no. Look, this is. We are expecting the Warriors to come out and win Game 4 tomorrow. They are as well. But it does feel like, to your point, JD, earlier about if the Warriors win tomorrow, I think the ball's back in their court, even though 2 games are on the road left in Sacramento. But if Sacramento wins tomorrow, don't you kind of feel like the Warriors can still win the series?
We'll get into that coming up next.
Okay.
888-957-9570. We'll get Joe in San Francisco. We'll get to the text line as well. We'll go rapid fire there. Adjustments for Game 4 off of the first 3 games of this series. And we'll reset everything with Draymond Green as well as Warriors This Week rolls on. It's JD and Evan Giddings on 95.7 The Game.
Attention facility professionals, property managers, and building owners. Earn free education credits and network with the top professionals by attending the West Coast Buildings and Facilities Management Conference.
he's on a roll. If he goes to 6-0, we're going to have to start, keeping his distance. Like, when pitchers are throwing the no-hitter, they keep, distance in the dugout. He's our good luck charm here. But when it comes to this game, I still think this series is the Warriors to lose because they still have better defensive players and a higher level of defensive capability they can play than the Kings. The key is, can they play buttoned up and get to that level? And I think Mike Brown knows that, and he's trying to play as frenetic and crazy as possible to get the Warriors out of sync and rushed and panicked and get Draymond emotional. And I've been watching playoff basketball unfortunately, for decades, and it always slows down. This is like the only series I've seen in years that it's actually faster, it seems like, than in the regular season. And I think that's what Mike Brown's trying to do, is keep the Warriors from getting into a buttoned-up state. If they can do that, I'm still confident they can win, but will they is a different thing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and Game 3, they were able to do it. It was the old play slower and look faster thing. Yeah. And that relates to the John Wooden quote, which you referenced earlier, that Steve Kerr had brought into the equation. I think it's an interesting question for Warrior fans here as we hit the halfway mark at 888-957-9570. I'm just going to steal it from Joe. Is this series the Warrior series to lose? Do you feel that way about it? I agree with the whole buttoned up component to it. I think if the Warriors play a certain way, the Kings in some ways can't match them, but the Warriors have not done it consistently enough through the first 3 games. They've allowed the game to get to a point where the Kings thrive in 2 of those 3 games, and the Kings were able to win in similar fashion to the way they won regular season games because of it.
Yeah, because the Kings have had more cohesion this year, their players have been together. They do look a little more, I think, at the beginning of the series, buttoned up than Golden State, who was reintroducing Andrew Wiggins for the first time in 2.5 months. Now they're reintroducing Draymond Green after getting suspended. There's a lot more moving parts on Golden State's side. But in a way, I do think that has helped them a bit because there is more of a question surrounding how the Warriors are going to play than Sacramento. There's more tape. There's more data. There's more familiarity with how Sacramento has been this entire season than Golden State, who has had so many ups and downs, so many different rotation changes, GP2 coming back into the fold, Andrew Wiggins being out, now being back, Curry's injuries. There's been so much more that's happened on Golden State's side that it does feel like they are trying, and I think in Game 3 they did piece things together in a positive fashion, and now it's a question of, can you continue that, which they have struggled a bit this year to do. They've done it at home. If you are the Kings, though, and Joe's question, is it the Warriors series to lose? And we talked about this before the break, JD. I contend that if the Warriors win Game 4, it is their series to lose, even though they have 2 of the last 3 games on the road. Meanwhile, if they lose Game 4 at home, and Sacramento's been the best road team in the West the entire season, then to me it would be the Kings series to lose.
I think I'm with you on that. And the Warriors could still win the series if they don't win tomorrow. The concern, though, would be, how does it look with them not winning tomorrow? And obviously we don't know how that would shake out, and I'd never rule the Warriors out with this core as their ability to do the unthinkable. This would be a new one. They have done the 3-1 thing before. They've never done the 3-1 thing with 2 of the 3 on the road. It's been OKC where you win your home game, you stabilize, you go steal 1, Game 6 Clay, and then you're coming back and you play Game 7 on your home floor. So it would be a little bit different at that point. I wouldn't rule it out, but I think the biggest reason why you'd be dejected if you're a Warrior fan would be, well, what happened in Game 4 that was more like maybe Game 1 and 2, and then it looks like you have fewer answers that you thought you were starting to find in the Game 3 win. So that, without knowing how Game 4 plays out, I wouldn't rule it out, but it would be demoralizing if it is the kind of game where the Kings are able to do the things that they did well in the first couple of games, plus maybe make some more shots, and the Warriors still don't make shots at a consistent level. That, like, the one thing I fear for the Warriors in this series moving forward is that hot Kings shooting game from 3. The one thing I'm starting to gain more confidence in the Warriors is their ability to understand, and I think Game 3 puts it right there in front of them to refer back to, but understanding the fact that if you do play buttoned up the way Joe said, you can control the game against them and make their inexperience work against them as well.
Yeah, games 1 and 2, they didn't control the pace. Game 3, they did, and they slowed things down. I thought Curry, along with even some of the primary ball handlers, Jordan Poole, Dante DiVincenzo, did a really good job at not forcing things. And Kevon Looney probably is the greatest example of that. You mentioned him during our last commercial break, how he kind of just like a patient running back, like a Le'Veon Bell in the backfield, kind of waiting for a hole to open and then hitting it at the right time. Kevon Looney he doesn't have the biggest vertical. He's not going to get up and down the court with Usain Bolt speed, but he understands where his spots are and where he needs to pick to attack. And I think that was how the Warriors played as a whole. And he embodied that primarily on the offensive glass, but also with his passing, understanding where the open spaces were, finding the right players at the right times. And then defensively, they turned the Kings into a jump shooting team, and they couldn't make jump shots. The one question that the Warriors have yet to answer is, in a close game, can they win that game? Because they didn't do it in games 1 and 2, and they didn't get to that point in game 3 where they had to fend off Sacramento in a 5-point, last 5 minutes type of crunch time situation. And I do think they'll have that opportunity in game 4 to potentially prove us and Kings fans wrong. But if the Kings start hitting shots, that's going to create another potential tie game, 5-minute type situation. The Warriors have won those games at home. Mm-hmm. And they need to prove that again in Game 4 if the situation presents itself.
John Dickinson and Evan Giddings, Warriors this week, 888-957-9570, Comcast Business text line open, as well as the phone lines, as we are getting you closer to Game 4 of the Western Conference first-round playoff series, 12:30 tomorrow, so make sure you get to Chase early and are ready to roll. You can stop by Harmonic Brewing and say hi to me, as I will be there doing Warriors Live at 11 o'clock. Have a brew with JD between 11 and 12 before heading in and being ready to roll here on 95.7 The Game. Is this series the Warriors series to lose? What do you think the Warriors do with Draymond Green in Game 4? Let's go ahead and hear another clip from Moses Moody from yesterday. We played the clip coming back from the break. Moses Moody said Draymond Green addressed the team in the lead up to Game 3. Willard and Dibbs followed up with, hey, what did Draymond say? You want to give me who he called out by name?
I actually think, based on Draymond Green's past, I think he went down the line. Like, he literally is like, Steph, I need this.
You got to dominate. Steph, you got to be a superstar. Clay, you got to be more patient, and if you're not hitting shots, you can't be taking a million shots.
Basically, I need
Andrew, these guys can't guard you. Andrew, these guys can't guard you. They can't hold you down. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You can finish it up.
Oh, no, I was just going to go down the list of the young guys. Dante DiVincenzo, take a shot. Moses Moody, when you get in the game, knock down that corner three, attack the rim. JK, I don't want to see you going one-on-one. I want to see you attacking, getting downhill, cutting, defending guys, keeping people in front. Kevon Looney, I think he actually said this on his podcast the other day, give me 20 rebounds. Give me a Dennis Rodman type effort. Everyone else. Steve Kerr, I need you to be on point with your rotation. Like, I literally think he just was like in front of everyone, in the middle of a huddle or on the bench, got up like, potentially a coach would, in Pee Wee basketball, was like, you, and you all need to do A, B, C, D, and that's how we're going to win this game. And I bet whenever we hear from Draymond Green next, we might get a hint as to what he said to each of those players. But I also think if there's one thing Draymond Green is good at, it is pressing buttons. And whether you want to give him credit for the Warriors, playing buttoned-up basketball in Game 3 without him or not, I do think he was able, in that pregame speech that Moses Moody alluded to light a little bit of a fire to the point where then the game, the crowd, and the situation was the kerosene that helped them get the win.
Yeah, everything matched. Everything matched, everything meshed, and the Warriors were able to get that win to make it a 2-1 series in favor of Sacramento, heading toward Game 4 coming up tomorrow. Of course, we'll have that for you right here on 95.7 The Game. Is this series now the Warriors series to lose? What do you think of some of the adjustments? And playoff series are always series of adjustments, and the Warriors were forced, as we talked about in the first hour, to play more of a kitchen sink game. They played a cleaner game with the turnovers. They got to the free throw line more. They stayed patient. They defended at an extremely high level. They got into their offense and ran it calmly. The role players played better at home. The Kings role players stunk on the road. We read the line of Monk, Lyles, and Mitchell. And everybody that basically played for the Warriors did something, even guys that weren't playing at all through the first couple of games.
And they probably needed to. There was a lot more minutes to go around with Draymond Green's absence. And so we knew we were going to see JaMychal Green. We're probably going to see Anthony Lamb. And I think that the adjustment that, whether you want to say that the Warriors or Steve Kerr made as it pertains to the two biggest matchups in this series, which was previously Draymond and Sabonis and then Curry and Fox, is where I saw the biggest difference. Steph Curry left around the 6-minute mark of the first quarter. At the time, De'Aaron Fox was also taken out. I think Steve Kerr wanted to match Curry's minutes with Fox's. And in the first half, we also saw him match Kevon Looney's minutes with Domantas Sabonis. Looney did a great job of defending without fouling, which played itself out in the second half, being able to be aggressive on the boards, also be able to get into the chest of Sabonis, and maybe make him feel that presence a lot more, which probably led to a bad game for Sabonis. He's had perhaps maybe one good one. Game 2, 24-9, you can give him. But games 1 and 3, he's looked a little neutralized, and he's turned the ball over more than he's dished out assists, which is completely foreign for a guy like Sabonis based on his season. I think the adjustments that Kerr made, matching minutes in the two biggest matchups, is where I saw kind of the Game 2 to Game 3 adjustment be made.
Yeah, and I want to come back to the minutes change with Curry and matching Fox, which I think was significant. And we haven't really talked a lot about Sabonis, because he's somebody that I'm starting to wonder about from Sacramento's side of things, if the Warriors may have a little something on him, and maybe some of the antics and the things that he was getting away with in the first two games. Now that we are to the point where it's Game 4 and it's 2-1 and Draymond's back, and the spotlight that was on Sabonis in Game 3 looked a little funny in the light, I thought Sabonis did. So more on that coming up here on 95.7 The Game, but let's keep it rolling on the phones with Austin in San Jose. What's going on, Austin?
What's going on, fellas? What's going on, JD, man? Listen, the great Domas, man. We're going to see how he turns out. I mean, he's a great player, no doubt.
Yes, he is.
But I think the pressure is going to get on him, JD. Listen, people talk about winning 2, but you got to win 4. And, that closeout for a team like Sacramento that hasn't done it before. I mean, you've heard some of the vets talk about how hard it is to close somebody out. Can you imagine they're going to have to close out the Warriors if they go to Game 7, a team that's won 4 championships with the same core? I mean, that's going to be, you talk about pressure, that's going to be epic. I'll be loving to see that. And then Draymond, you spoke about the great Draymond Green. That's my guy. Whether he gets suspended or not, he's still my guy. The Warriors are not the dog team they are without him. I can imagine him giving that speech and just getting in everybody's face saying, this is your time to shine. This is your opportunity, Moody, and all you guys have been complaining about not playing, not getting minutes. Here's your time to show, what you got. So I think the last thing I got, guys, is I think the series is going to turn on somebody like Moody, somebody like Kuminga, somebody that's kind of unheralded to come through with a really big game. And I think that's going to be a difference in the series. It's time for our young guys to really show that our young guys can compete with the other players' young guys, and that's going to have to be the case if the Warriors are going to advance in this playoff. So that's what I got, guys. Thanks for a few minutes.
Appreciate it. I mean, Moses Moody, I think, is already doing it.
Yeah.
At the end of Game 2 and all of Game 3. I mean, the way he played at the end of Game 2, it was obvious that he was going to get minutes. in Game 3. That was even before the Draymond suspension and the GP2 illness. And he stepped right in and looked real comfortable and knocked down his threes, which I've always said, if he can knock down his threes, then he's playable, even if he isn't doing other things well. But he's done everything pretty well, and he's looked like another one of these steadying type players that you need to beat Sacramento. The erratic type players don't work, and the erratic style of play doesn't work against the Kings. Steady, calm players work against the Kings, and I think that's why Moses Moody has worked once Steve Kerr threw him in there, and Steve Kerr threw him in there basically because he was done with Kuminga. I mean, it was this guy can't play anymore, so I'm going to that guy, and Moses Moody took advantage of the opportunity and now looks like somebody that's going to be playing for the foreseeable future in this series.
Yeah, and I think what Austin is alluding to when he talks about the young guys is how do you, like you said, JD, steady those, whether it be, kind of situations where the Kings are going on a mini run, or the most glaring ones when Steph is not on the court. And Moses Moody has proved to be a more plug-and-play player, especially of the younger guys, than perhaps even a guy like Jordan Poole at this point. I know he had a better Game 3, but on the road, especially in Game 2, he looked particularly lost and unplayable. Moses Moody has been, and this is why I think a lot of fans were perhaps frustrated with the regular season and maybe his usage, is because of games like Game 3 where you throw him in and he looks ready for the moment.
Don't do it, E. Finish your thought, but don't do it.
Don't do what?
Don't do it. Don't do the JD pet peeve of because he played well in the playoffs, that means he should have been playing all year thing.
Oh, no.
I didn't think you were, but I just...
Well, but I think that's why fans are confused, because he looks good in the postseason, and he was more playable than Kuminga last postseason too, to some extent, and didn't get as much run in the regular season. But the difference, and this is why I'm not going to go completely there, JD, is because a lot of times in the regular season, one, there's guys in front of him. Two, he wasn't knocking down those shots that he did in games 2 and 3 immediately off the bench. And if you're not making those open shots, if you're not making those corner threes, if you're not crashing, if you're not keeping guys in front, and you don't do that as a young player in the first 4 to 5 minutes, Steve Kerr's going to go to somebody else. I think that in this postseason, Moses Moody wasn't first in line. Kuminga got first dibs at the table in Game 1, but he proved that in those short spans that he wasn't able to play the way Kerr needed to. Next man up, Moses Moody. He steps in. He performs well. He earns minutes and has earned minutes in this postseason because he's been ready. He has clearly taken, whatever lack of opportunity in the regular season that he's gotten, pushed it to the side, been a big boy about it, even though he's 20 years old, and now is ready for his spot in the postseason to the point where you can make the argument Moses Moody's outperformed Keegan Murray, who's played the entire season for the Sacramento Kings.
888-957-9570. James and Napa next here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. Hey, James.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I think that Moody and Kuminga and Poole need to play more. I think the Poole needs to start. I mean, you can't go away from the success that the team has had. And with Kuminga and Moody, if they need minutes, so the question is, who do you take the minutes from? Who are they going to play for? And I think that it's got to be for Draymond. Draymond has become a liability. I'd like to see him on the bench more. I'd like to see Poole start. What do you think?
Appreciate the call. It wouldn't surprise me, and there was a lot to get to there. It's not Moody and Kuminga. It's like Kuminga's in his own category. Like I think as Draymond goes back in and as Peyton comes back in, I think Kuminga probably goes into the he's not going to play box and maybe if the Warriors are ahead, he can give him a little. He's kind of a front runner player too. I think he's a nice guy to throw in when you're ahead in a game and the vibes are good and the team's already playing well. Crowd gets into it at home when Kuminga does anything. But I think he's probably, if you're looking for who's not going to play because Moody is, and now you've got Draymond and Peyton, I think Kuminga probably goes, at least in the initial plan for tomorrow, in the not going to play category. As far as Moody's definitely going to play, I think as much as he's played, if not more. And look, we're probably talking 15 minutes. But the question becomes, does Poole start? if Poole starts, does that mean Draymond or Looney come off the bench? And I'm sorry, if it comes down to that, I can't not start Looney in this situation because he's done the job that he has against Sabonis and been such a steadying influence. I could see Draymond Green watching the game Thursday night and going in and saying to Steve, hey, if you want to bring me off the bench, bring me off the bench. I'll be the backup center. Like, I really could see that. But I don't think the start of the game has really been an issue for the Warriors, so you could play them both and then still shift Poole in for one of the other ones. It's more about combinations. You get Poole in for one of the centers, split him up that way, and figure out what your game plan is from there. I know that's a lot to chew on. We'll
No. I was just going to say before we get to the break, and on the other side, I think we can also get into what that closing lineup is going to look like.
Also important.
That is really where games 1 and 2 were won and lost for the Kings and the Warriors, and that might be perhaps where the bigger decision comes in.
And Jordan Poole is, I think, going to have to play more. DiVincenzo handling the ball more. That was another subtle little difference for the Warriors. There was more Curry off the ball. Poole's going to bring it up. DiVincenzo is going to bring it up and initiate the offense, and that really helped the Warriors in Game 3. All right, 2 hours flying by here, 888-957-9570. It's John Dickinson and Evan Giddings. We're with you until 1 o'clock right here on 95.7 The Game.
In honor of Women's History Month, MIW, Mentoring and Inspiring Women in Radio, Inc., is celebrating...
All right, final hour. We are flying through here. The morning and on into the afternoon. Beautiful Saturday here in San Francisco. 888-957-9570. It's John Dickinson and Evan Giddings. We're about 24 and a half hours away from tip-off at Chase Center, Game 4. It's going to be electric. Round 1. Warriors and the Kings right here at 95.7 The Game. Warriors live tomorrow, 11 a.m., Harmonic Brewing, inside Thrive City. I'm asking for the outside. I've done the show inside there. Mm-hmm. I've done the show outside there. Tomorrow it's going to be out on the patio overlooking the water. You got overlooking the water on one side, you got Chase right off to the other side, and it's just going to be big time vibes. So if you're in the area, if you're coming to the game, 11 o'clock, I'll be out there for the hour leading you up to Tim and Tom, who are going to be on the call beginning at noon, and then tip off at 12:30. Get there early and be ready. The Warriors obviously encouraging fans to not be a sleepy Sunday afternoon crowd here in what is the pivot point of any 7-game series, that Game 4, right?
No doubt. Everyone that is going out tonight, call it maybe like an hour earlier if you're going to the game.
Or just push through. Or just
keep the party going to Harmonic Brewing.
Or just push through. Like it doesn't, and nobody's, I don't want to, I get it. You're a wise man. You're trying to keep up. But
shout out, James.
Hey, push through if you have to. I think what we're both getting at is no excuses.
No, absolutely
JD, we
not.
would die if we tried to push through at our age. We would die.
Hey, speak for yourself, brother.
I know. I want to see it then.
I know you got a few more. You got a couple kids pulling you down.
Of problems.
I would say you got a couple kids and a bunch of problems but I don't know.
We're gonna find out who's got a Kevon Looney liver tomorrow. That's what we're gonna find out.
Finding out today.
Iron Man, come on.
888-957-9570. 888-957-9570. So much to get into here. Adjustments both ways. The question that Joe, one of the callers, posed in hour number 2, is this series the Warriors now to lose? What do the Warriors do with Draymond Green in Game 4? Where do you see adjustments for Sacramento? We haven't talked about Sabonis. I know we touched on it a little bit in the last break, and there are a couple things you wanted to get into as well. But let's try and make this last hour about the basketball as much as possible here as we look toward Game 4.
Yeah, look, I think the two matchups that really have dictated this series in the first 3 games are the matchup between Fox and Curry. Round 1, round 2 goes to Fox, round 3 goes to Curry, and then Sabonis against the Warriors bigs because of the absence of Draymond Green. Sabonis, in my opinion, has lost at least 2 of those rounds. And you can make an argument in Game 2, a lot of it was cleanup. He was effective, 24 points, 9 rebounds.
And the boards were huge.
But, Sabonis has been, as you've put it, JD, throughout the regular season, their best player. And a lot of that has been because of his passing. That has been neutralized by the Warriors in this series thus far. He's turned the ball over more times than he has assists. I believe it's 13-10. He has not been able to initiate the offense the way Sacramento and their fans have seen them do the majority of this season. And a lot of that has been credit to what the Warriors have been able to do, which is basically dare him to get himself involved, dare him to shoot. And he hasn't taken the bait, or he's been inconsistent when he has. They've made him work for everything, and they've also eliminated a lot of the dribble handoffs that have made the Kings' offense as good as it has, statistically speaking, the best in history.
Yeah, Sabonis has not gotten it going for himself consistently, but it also has worked hand in hand with the Kings' inability to get a lot of the three-point shots that they like. And they have gotten some clean ones, but the dribble handoff game is a big part of that. And he typically, for the first 3 quarters of a game, they run everything through him. They get their shooters going. He gets going. And then Fox, as he's done in a few stretches of this series, goes into takeover mode in the fourth quarter. The Warriors have forced, I think, Fox and the Kings to go to that mode sooner, and they've still been able to do it in the first 2 games. Fox took over late in the third quarter of Game 1, a little more throughout in Game 2. But as far as Sabonis goes, I mentioned it, he looked a little funny in the light in Game 3, having a target on his back, having the crowd on him. He was getting away with a lot of stuff in a sneaky way through the first 2 games of the series. It all culminated in the incident with Draymond, where Draymond was clearly in the wrong, but Sabonis wasn't nothing, whether it was grabbing the ankle, whether it was the throwdown of Clay the play before, whether it was those two getting locked up in game 1. Sabonis has lived real comfortably in that world of, I'm going to get away with my holding and grabbing, and I'm also going to fly back and, you hit me. Like, he's been the guy that's been doing a lot, but then acting like he's the one getting hit, aside from the one incident in where he actually did get hit, where Draymond got ejected and subsequently suspended. But I thought there were signs in game 3 with the crowd on him and the Warriors on that first play of the game where he got the ball at the high post and they took a step back. Like, you can have that 18-footer. You can absolutely have it. I think that's the kind of thing that can mess with somebody's head. They were going to make sure they weren't going to allow him to hand it off to anybody or give somebody an open 3. And so I think this is the bed Sabonis has made with the antics, and now he and the Kings have to try to overcome it, and the Warrior fans are going to keep letting him have it. And I think at some point, if he has another bad game tomorrow and the Warriors are able to get it to 2-2, I think at some point everybody in the gym starts to know that maybe he ain't it in this series, including his own teammates. And I think that's something that can be a little bit unnerving because he's been such a big part of what they do, their best player all year long.
Yeah, he's been their go-to facilitator, and De'Aaron Fox has had to play both the role of scorer and facilitator so far in this series, and he's done a damn good job of that. But on the for the Warriors, a big reason why Steph Curry is able to move off the ball as much as he does is because a Draymond Green, or in the case of Game 3, a Kevon Looney with 9 assists, is able to be that point forward. Sabonis is that guy for Sacramento, and whether it be because they're daring him to shoot, they're also, I think, because they're giving him so much space, they're allowed to go under a lot of screens to be able to keep a De'Aaron Fox in front, a Malik Monk, and in Game 3, you're also going under because Sacramento hasn't demonstrated they can make a 3-point shot. So you don't have to chase as much. There's more, I think, or I should say less space in the lane, which is going to help you rebound a little more effectively off of those misses. And the Warriors right now, I think, are in the head of Sabonis a little bit.
Starting to, for sure.
It started, I think, with the Draymond Green incident, and we clearly saw in Game 3 with the cascade of boos raining down every single time he touched the ball. I want to give the Warriors fans credit for that. They were on him from the jump, and I think he felt that a lot, combined with the fact that he was getting outworked by Kevon Looney, combined with the fact that even when it was a JaMychal Green or an Anthony Lamb, he was not as physically imposing as I think he's used to being, and the Warriors took full advantage of that. And now it's a little like, okay, in Game 4, Sabonis, are you going to be all right? Like, are you going to show up? Because so far in this series, he's borderline been their third best player.
And I think the Warriors deserve credit in this sense. And Fox burned him in the first 2 games, especially Game 1. But I do give the Warriors credit so far in not taking the bait as far as trying to shift the defensive game plan so much toward Fox to where maybe it opens up some other ways that he can reacclimate Sabonis in positions where he can kind of get comfortable. And that's one thing I think if I'm the Warriors, I would be looking for early. One, do the Kings make a lineup change? Because I think they might put Davion Mitchell into the starting lineup, and we can get into the Curry, Fox, and matching minutes and all that. I also think the Kings might look to tell Fox from the opening tip to go takeover mode. Go fourth quarter Fox in the first quarter and just try to make it so painful on the Warriors that they have to, in game, try to direct more attention to him, and then maybe the shooters can get going off of him. You can come back to Sabonis. The Warriors have been willing to, in some ways, let Fox cook, I think, in this series. You can't let it happen to the tune of the end of Game 1, where he takes a game over and wins it, which he's done a ton this year, why he was the clutch player of the year. But I think if there's something from the Kings side that the Warriors have to be on the lookout for, it's, hey, Fox has been the best thing they've had in this series. Go get it.
Oh, and maybe that's why if we're discussing starting lineups, I expect Draymond to be back in the starting lineup in Game 4. But I do think if we're talking about adjustments made by Sacramento, while we could see an early introduction off the bench of either Gary Payton II or Dante DiVincenzo to go a little bit smaller to try and at least make Fox work harder if he comes out of the gates with his hair on fire. Because the one thing that you cannot allow him to do is get past the first man to the point where now he's kicking out to shooters and Sacramento finds it from distance, because that's the one thing they haven't been able to do this year, or in the series, pardon me. And I think that the Warriors have done a good job of not allowing that first barrier to break as much as we saw, especially on the road in the regular season. You're not going to keep De'Aaron Fox in front of you the entire game, but if you're able to kind of collapse the paint, force him into the mid-range area, which he's had success. At the very least, he's not getting other guys as involved. And that's where Sabonis has been ineffective, because there has been less of the ball movement on the Sacramento side than we've seen, especially in that Game 3, than Golden State. And when they move the basketball, when they're swinging it around, when the shooters get involved, they're very difficult to stop offensively, whether it's in the first quarter or the fourth quarter. And if you're Golden State, the one time that we've seen them be able to get stops consistently is when there is kind of just a one sort of possession, a one shot, one rebound, get up and go. When the Warriors are taking the ball out of the basket, which we saw down the stretch of games 1 and 2, then their offense gets affected, and it just steamrolls in the favor of Sacramento.
888-957-9570. Gene in Oakland next here on Warriors This Week. Hey, Gene.
Hey, guys. Morning. So, JD, you said something before the last game, which I thought turned out to be spot on. You mentioned that the team was kind of acting a little too complacent or cocky or smug. I think there was something about Fox saying anyone who didn't vote for him as clutch player should have their credentials removed, something of that nature. I think that's what happened. I think they went in there a little flat, a little bit too sure of themselves, much too soon, as it turns out. And we came in. So the one thing I think both of us got wrong, though, is we thought if we won, it would be through a shootout, like 135, 130.
Yeah, I was wrong about that one, Gene. Go ahead, my man.
So same here. I totally believe that. But they came out and held them down to 97 points, and that's a beautiful surprise. So. As far as moving forward, one more thing. So I like to look at body language and, facial expressions and things like that. After that game, I noticed that, Fox had this kind of smug on his face, look on his face, and as if to say, all right, yeah, you got us this time, but wait till the next game. But the rest of them, particularly Sabonis, they look pretty concerned. I think we've planted a seed in their minds. I think we exposed Mr. Sabonis as, kind of slow-footed, much as we did to some extent with Jokic last year. I think he's going to have a real hard time moving forward. But having said that, I expect these guys to show up Sacramento and really play this next game as if it's the 7th game and really, give it their all. Because I think they know if they lose this game, then momentum definitely does shift. Can I say one more thing about Draymond?
You got it, Gene. Yeah, do it.
All right. So Draymond, I mean, what do we think of Draymond moving forward? So I think we all agree, especially those of us who have been following them from the beginning, that Dre is critical for winning in the future. It's not, you can't look at this last game and say, yeah, we had our 2 best defenders out, but we held them to 97, so we don't need him. That's not true, of course. I think that Dre's going to have to be part of the offense. We said this over and over many times. If he drives and scores or hits 1 or 2 threes or some combination, that means that they're not going to be playing 5-on-4 and the offense will keep flowing. So I have no concerns at this point. Once again, I look for us to win tomorrow. I think it's going to be a much tougher game, and then maybe 6 or 7 we wind it up.
Thanks, Gene. A lot to chew on there from Gene. Just the one thing I jotted down quickly, Evan, the fact that the Warriors won Game 3 with their defense was a pleasant surprise, and I think that's also the fact that they didn't have to scramble to win 130 to 125. Like, I think in some ways that's if you're a Warrior fan, comforting and gives you confidence that You're able to slow this team down because the Warriors have been able to slow the Kings down. Some of it maybe is they're missing some shots they usually hit. But aside from the clutch time, the Warriors' defense has been excellent, really, in this series.
No, you can make the case that they have outplayed Sacramento as far as the total minutes in this series. The difference has been either at the end of quarters or the end of games, especially in the first two. I don't know if this surprises you, JD, the fact that they played defense well at home, but they have been a pretty damn good defensive team at Chase Center. On the road is really where they struggle. So, look, it is a feat to hold the Sacramento Kings to under 100 points. That does not happen very often. But I just think that, especially without Draymond Green and Gary Payton,
to hold them under 110.
Seriously, yeah. They averaged 121 this year, something like that.
Yeah.
I do think that the Warriors, when they are clicking offensively, it's a little pickup-ish in the sense that you make your shots, you want to get back on defense and play a little bit harder. I also think that being at Chase Center and just in that familiar territory in which they have won consistently all year locks them in a little bit more. I also do wonder if the fact that they didn't have Draymond Green allowed guys to kind of settle into some newer roles. They knew they're going to get more playing time. Jordan Poole knows he's going to be starting, in which he's performed better this year. Dante DiVincenzo is going to get some more minutes. Moses Moody is going to get 15. Jonathan Kuminga is going to get 10 or 15. There are guys outside of just the big 3 or 4, if you want to include Looney in that know that they're going to have to step up in this game. I also think that maybe with less bigs playing consistently, Draymond and Looney, I don't think they can't be on the court at the same time, but with more speed to combat Sacramento, I don't necessarily look at the Kings as an uber physical team, JD, but they are very, very fast. And so when you have one less big on the court, I do think there is something defensively that they're able to keep some guys in front of them and then gang rebound off of those misses.
Yeah, and the rebounding is critical. And the Warriors did a much better job rebounding in Game 3, and that's something that's going to have to continue because much like the frenetic pace where the Kings have thrived in this series and kind of baiting the Warriors into making mistakes, the other area where they've made up for the fact that they've been not great offensively and the Warriors have been able to defend them is they've get the extra chances in those first two games, which really flipped the game in their favor. Bruce in Walnut Creek next. Let's go rapid fire here. 888-957-9570. Hey, Bruce.
Hi, I think two things, Art. Slowing them down on defense, and I think we need to work on Sabonis' right hand. He's hurt, and I think we need to push on that. Let him flop all he likes, and maybe he'll hurt that hand again.
Thanks for the call. Yes, Sabonis has been playing with a broken hand, basically, for, I think, since the end of December. Early part of January. He's played through it and been a monster, so I don't know how much of it is really a factor at this point, but yeah, Sabonis is somebody that the spotlight is only going to grow on him tomorrow afternoon.
But that's why it is a little interesting because I don't think anyone entering this series was questioning the toughness of Domantas Sabonis, but it does beg... When he does the flopping and the theatrical antics on the ground, he's kind of pulling and tugging and making it seem like someone else is hurting him. And then you see he's playing with a broken hand. You're like, something doesn't really match up here.
Well, he's running a game in this series. Like it's and the Kings and you talk about things that either you were wrong about or have surprised you. And I think we are once you get to Game 3, Game 4, you can start to say, hey, I thought this, and this would happen. It hasn't, but this, and this has happened. One thing that really surprised me was the week leading up to Game 1, the Kings, over and over, every one of their players that stepped up to the mic with the media talked about physicality and the need to be physical and how they have to punch first and all these. And it was obviously a message from Mike Brown to where he thought step one against the Warriors is you got to try to punk them physically. When you'd start, hey, inside info, what's the secret sauce? What is Mike? Well, Mike Brown clearly told his team that he thinks you can push the Warriors around, or at least that's the first step toward having a chance to beat them is to be extremely physical. I thought, hey, if they want to do that, they're going to get out of character because that's not, aside from maybe Sabonis, who they've been all year, They were able to do it in those first two games, I think in part riding the emotion of the building in Sacramento. But regardless of why, they've been able to do it and keep their composure. I think the Warriors tomorrow continue to put that spotlight on Sabonis, continue to put pressure on them as they work closer to evening the series. And I think you may start to see the Kings lose their composure a little bit because this whole tough guy thing for them is up and down their roster, not what they really are. It is a little bit of an act. It's a role that they've played extremely well. But if the Warriors can get it to a point where the tactics are not working, I think they might start to lose their head a little bit the way the Warriors did in those first couple of games.
That's definitely an interesting point and something to keep an eye on, JD. And I think it kind of contributes again to the lack of bulletin board material they have at this point. Because coming into the series, you're saying, they're trying to be physical. They want to establish their presence because everybody sees them as the underdog, the upstart young, kind of cute team that scores a lot of points and gives up a lot of points, much like the Warriors used to be back in the day. And so they're trying to establish some sort of physical, especially defensive identity in which you need to win in the playoffs. And they did it in games 1 and 2, but now it feels like they're searching for some of that. They're searching for something that they can kind of courage up in game 4 to get back and take control of this series again, because the Warriors backed into the corner looked like the team, and they should have come out of game 3. The series is over if they don't win based on what we know of history. They were the ones that came out and dictated the tone of that game. And you could even say that in game 2 a little bit, I thought there was some semblance of physicality from Golden State, and Sacramento was able to match that punch. But now in game 4, and why I think there's a little more pressure even on Sacramento to win this game is because there was something missing in that last game from the Kings. And for a team that does feel like a complete underdog against the defending champs, they have lost that role, I think, by establishing themselves the first 2 games. Meanwhile, the Warriors, the one place you don't want them is feeling like they got to swing upwards with everything that they have been through, and especially this core. Now the Warriors have a game plan, a blueprint of how they can win if they take care of the basketball, if they take care of the glass, and they get out and are able to shoot semi-well. They don't have to shoot the lights out to beat the Kings as they did in game 3. I think the Kings are searching for answers more than the Warriors are heading into this game, even though it was kind of the questions that we felt like Golden State had to answer after game 2.
All right, 888-957-9570. That guy and Connor, you guys are coming up right out of the chute as we've got one final segment for you. It's Warriors This Week here on a Saturday on 95.7 The Game.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising. After I figured out the top...
And Evan Giddings. Been a great show today. 888-957-9570. Warriors and Kings tomorrow. Game 4 at Chase. 11 o'clock Warriors Live. Join me at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. We'll be out there for pregame and postgame. It's going to be fun. Let's get back to the phones, though. We appreciate that guy and Connor holding on through the break. So we'll get right to it with that guy in Oakland here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, that guy.
Hey, good morning, EG and JD. Great show, man. I appreciate you guys holding it down.
Thanks, man.
You guys touched on a lot of the topics I want to cover, but I want to finish up with the Iron Man Looney. But I'll kick it off with this. I think at this point, the Sacramento Kings. It's a cute story, but it's just not their time because the Warriors aren't done yet. You know what I'm saying? So I had a friend out in Woodland that says they just want to hold on and see if they can get to Game 7. So. That being said, I think this thing with Draymond, Draymond's my guy, by the way. If you're listening, Dre, keep doing what you do, brother. But I think this was a good thing in the fact that not that it was good, but they made the best of the scenario, meaning it gives these guys some experience. They were able to go in there without Draymond, fill in for him, and hold it down and get the big win. And it gives them confidence. It gives these young guys experience that when they do rotate in and out with Draymond and everybody else, they can keep this thing running. You know, in the past, they fell behind when the starters would go out. But I think this was a good thing in that respect. And anyone that says it's better without Draymond are the same guys that said we were better without KD when we swept Portland a couple years back, and we all know how that season ended. So I got that. And also, so this is like when Tyson would get hit in the face a couple of times, adjust his mouthpiece, pick up his shorts, and just go in for the kill. I don't think the Kings win another game this series. And to finish us off, JD, I know you have a lot of pull with the Warriors. And I say this because I know that in my heart there's going to be a Game 6. If you can get those T-shirts, people don't want to wear them. But if you get the white background with the Dubs gold and blue and get for Looney, you know, an homage to Looney with his number on it, and everyone rocking that when they announce him on Game 6, I mean, that would be awesome because Loon's the Iron Man. Appreciate it. Go Dubs. I'll be in the house. Come early and bring it.
Appreciate it, that guy. He's calling for a white T-shirt giveaway. Is that right? Did I catch that?
A whiteout? Is that what he's looking for?
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is about the Warrior fans that don't want to wear the gold shirts. It's a little strange. And like, I mean, majority of people are wearing them, but
it's a nice aesthetic. I'll give them that. I mean,
the gold looks good. The white has looked great.
Was it because there was white shirts in Sacramento, or I don't know?
I'm not sure, but it just looks great. I think the white and the gold both look great. I just don't know why. Oh, Craig, you got a theory on
gold-blooded, baby?
Why the fans don't want to wear the gold shirts as much?
That loses me when people just don't want it. It's a free shirt, throw it on. I know you came with your outfit and you want to look fitted, but at the end of the day, we all came here as a family. This is our house. We're trying to hold it down. Take the shirt off when you leave the place, but during the game, put the shirt on, bro. It's an extra large. Make it happen.
Yeah, I don't know what
one size fits all.
I don't know what the story is behind that. Like it does seemingly pop up a lot where, you know, and again, it's a fan thing, but we talk about everything. I mean, it does seem like they're always trying to push people to wear this. Like, just wear the shirt.
Yeah, just throw it on.
If you're a Warrior fan, if you're not a Warrior fan, maybe not.
They also gave out some rally towels at the game, and you know that created a nice little kind of buzz and energy throughout the arena. Look, I mean, I give the Warriors credit. They're trying to create as much uniform and uniformity as possible.
Plus, it looks cool on TV.
Yeah, the gold pops. The white pops in Sacramento. The gold pops as well. I think what doesn't pop is when you go with the black shirts.
I was going to say, you can't give out the black tees.
Darker shirts don't look as good on television. Black, the worst. But yeah, I think the Warriors are going to keep up with the gold, which is something that's worked for them.
Worked in Game 3.
Blue doesn't work. Blue doesn't work as well.
No, even in those, you know, the OKC series on the road, I think they did kind of like a blue out, and it just looked a little strange. The darker colors don't show out as much.
White. You're right about the black. The Clippers have theirs now, and it looks like no one got the email. Like, you know, the only time you see the T-shirts is when they're on the seats. Like, no one's wearing them, and it looks like seats, so the black doesn't work.
Let's go to Connor in Dublin next. Hey, Connor.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. So I just wanted to, you know, talk about how, you know, the Warriors' great win. Glad they got it, and I think that game, the crowd played a big part in it. I think, you know, being just at home for the Warriors, as we all know, is a great advantage. And just, I'm a little nervous about throwing Draymond into the mix. I don't know. I don't think it was because they won that they didn't have Draymond. I think it's just the home and, you know, the crowd, great ambient environment, and just the Warriors, as we all know, do well in the home at Chase Center. And it's just go Warriors. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look, to me, the Warriors can't go wrong with Draymond being back in the fold tomorrow, no matter how they do it. I don't think they have to have him come off the bench. It wouldn't surprise me if Draymond offered, as we've mentioned a couple times, and Osteiny said that yesterday. It's far more about combinations for me. In if Looney and Draymond start, Wiggins and Clay and Steph, how do you, at that point, separate them once you make your first sub, which probably would be Jordan Poole, to get a little bit of that secondary ball handler. Like, Jordan Poole needs to be out there. Warriors need to have a secondary ball handler out there with Steph. I would say almost at all times, except maybe at the beginning of each half. I also wonder what happens if Sacramento starts Davion Mitchell in the place of Keegan Murray, and how does that change things? Do the Warriors at that point go quick sub? And if they do quick sub, who are you subbing? Because I think Looney has to play a lot. Like, that's one thing. Like, it's not so much Draymond hurts the Warriors, but Looney, the Warriors benefited for Looney playing 31 in Game 3. So how do you balance that? And do the Kings try to do something to upset what the Warriors have had working by making a lineup change themselves?
Yeah, I mean, Looney was, I think, second behind Curry. He's a plus 21. Like, he was incredible in Game 3. He was effective, and he, most importantly, didn't need the ball. I think when it comes to the primary ball handlers for Golden State, Draymond Green usually is one of those guys, along with Curry. But it was interesting to see the offense run a bit through Poole, a bit through DiVincenzo, with the absence of Draymond. I think when it comes to the rotations, what I'll be most curious to see tomorrow, JD, is if we see less of Draymond and Looney on the floor at the same time with Sabonis out there, or Len, or whichever one of the near 7-footers they got out there, because it does seem like Sacramento can, with two non-shooters on the floor defensively, kind of key in on either Curry, or Poole, or even Wiggins. There's more attention that can be paid to those guys when you have both Dre and Kevon Looney on the floor. I know Kerr typically likes to have his defensive lineup out there, especially in crunch time, and that's where we saw the GP2, the Dre, and the Kevon Looney kind of closing lineup. But I don't know if you can play even two non-shooters for the majority of this game, just based on what we saw in Game 3, because if Sacramento isn't coming out and hitting shots the way they are, then you aren't necessarily needing to have both Dre and Kevon out there on the floor at the same time. I'm with you that Looney needs to play and play a lot. I don't know if 31 minutes is going to be the task, because he did look a little gassed towards the end of Game 3, but it was a large separation. Draymond, to me, is... He's interesting, but he has to be out there. He has to play big minutes. And when he's at his best, I think the Warriors can take anyone. Nevertheless, the Sacramento Kings, to me, JD, I don't know how you see the closing lineup playing out, but Kerr, to me, is still searching for a lineup that he trusts down the stretch of these games. And I don't know if it's Wiggins, Clay, Curry, GP2 Looney, Draymond Looney, or Dre, DiVincenzo. Like, I'm not sure if Kerr tomorrow has an idea of final 5 minutes, tie ball game, who's my 5 out there.
Yeah, and maybe Draymond has to be that ball handler in terms of being the point guard if they aren't going to have a Poole or a DiVincenzo out there with Curry down the stretch. Like, maybe Draymond has to be somebody that looks to be more of the true point guard, not just somebody that's holding the ball and waiting for a pass to come open, but somebody that actually is running the ball up the court and getting the Warriors into their offense.
They've treated Draymond in a way, first 2 games, the way the Warriors have kind of treated Sabonis.
Yes, they have.
Just sagging off him, take whatever you want. If you want to dump it off to this guy, go for it. But we're going to make sure that there's no open looks for the Currys, the Clays, the Wiggins, everything you're going to have to work for on the outside.
The finishing combinations are going to be critical. The other part to that is, if you're the Warriors, well, maybe you don't let the game get to a point where the final 5 minutes totally matters.
That's fair.
And I mean, that worked in Game 3. And again, you can't live that way to the tune of 3 more wins. You're going to have to win at least one close one. The one close one is probably going to have to be in Sacramento. But, the closing lineup, I think, is going to have to be dependent on who's playing well. There are a lot of different options, like who's playing well in that individual game. So I can't, a lot of times I think I probably could piece it together. I don't know that I can piece it together for the Warriors tomorrow. I'm going to have to see how Game 4 plays out. The one thing, just kind of going through the actual players, and they're going to have to, and who plays more, who doesn't. Mm-hmm. Like Curry, I love the match in minutes thing, by the way, with Curry being subbed out. It got him away from Davion Mitchell. Mitchell comes in middle of the quarter to hound Curry for a few minutes. We're just going to take that off the board right away. Fox is not in the game at that point, so you're taking Curry out, but you're taking Curry out when Fox is out, and you're comfortable in your defense if you're the Warriors, especially when Fox is not in the game. So I wonder if the Kings try to do something to counter that. Maybe it's starting Mitchell. Maybe it's starting Monk. They could do something to try and potentially counter. Mitchell would be the move, I think, in that instance, because then it would, Fox playing the whole first quarter could be the other thing. Like have Fox go to the old Curry rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Fox playing 44 minutes could be part of the whole thing, where it's just, hey, you're 26 or whatever, and you were just going to play the whole game. But Curry's got to do his thing. Clay, Wiggins, obviously Draymond's going to be out there. Looney, Poole, and DiVincenzo are the guys that have to play a lot, I think, and help as the alternate ball handlers. Beyond that, I think it's Moody. I think Moody is, and forgive me if I've skipped somebody, but I think with Draymond, Moody and Payton, I think that's the 9, so to speak, that the Warriors are going to play if you're looking to find a 9. It's the starters. If Draymond's in, Poole and DiVincenzo 6, 7, Payton 8, and Moody 9. I think that's if you're looking at 9 and you got to cut it, that's the move.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the rotations, and I think now more than ever, as we've seen throughout this season, the rotation changes or is dictated by the game. And that is where, as far as the closing lineup is concerned, I do think Kerr is going to have to maybe ride the hot hand a little more than he's previously used to. There's not really a set of guys, especially with Draymond coming back. Like, if you want to talk about him starting or not, or coming off the bench, it's understandable. But I think he needs to be out there in crunch time just because of what he's able to bring to the court. Does that mean no Looney? What if Looney's got another big rebounding game? Like, he might need to be out there as well. I just, to me, we've decided of the 5 down the stretch, usually there's that one spot that's kind of open, and it's whether it's Poole, whether it's DiVincenzo, whether it's Looney, and it's kind of been up for grabs with Curry, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond being the set 4. That, to me, is maybe a little more up in the air between Draymond and Looney's spot in Game 4, especially if Draymond isn't as effective as we're expecting him to be coming off the suspension. But if you're the Warriors, I mean, trying to make De'Aaron Fox's life as difficult as possible and make him work in the first 20, 25 minutes to the point where maybe he's a little bit gassed down the stretch. I think if for the Sacramento Kings, the adjustment to be made, you mentioned it, Davion Mitchell playing more. And because if Malik Monk's not shooting the ball well, he's not going to help you. Davion Mitchell can at least give you something on defense, even if he's not making shots.
And he gives you somebody, too, the flip side to that the Warriors can potentially help off of and try to dare to make some shots. And he's made a couple of big shots in this series.
Game 2, yeah.
He also can be somebody that's very streaky as far as missing open looks. And so that could play into the Warriors' hands potentially as well. But I loved what the Warriors did as far as taking Curry out and matching up those minutes with Fox. There were just too many stretches in this series where Curry was not on the court, and not that Curry's the guy guarding Fox, but Fox would go into takeover mode when Curry was out, and then the Warriors are vulnerable offensively on the other end to be able to do enough consistently to kind of match those instances when Fox would go on his little runs to try and take the game over. So limiting that, I thought, was great. And then you saw Mike Brown, when Kerr did it in the second half, he just put Fox back in. Like, he takes Fox out, Kerr takes Curry out, he just puts Fox right back into the game. But even forcing him to have to do that is something off schedule. And the Warriors made the Kings a little more off schedule. I think Mike Brown, excellent head coach, excellent in terms of preparation, game to game, taking a week to lead up to how you want to attack a specific team in a series. I think he's brilliant at that. I don't think he's as good at in-game tactical adjustments going away from this or that. And I think it's even more tricky for him to do it with this Kings team because they have been so cohesive with the 8 that play in the same role, the same times every single night. Like, they have been a template with their top 8 for about 4 months right now. It just depends on who their ninth has been or if they play an extra big. But Lyles and Monk and Mitchell know they're playing basically the same shifts every single night in addition to the starters. So when you force them to go away with it, maybe you make them a little bit uncomfortable.
No, it is interesting how the continuity for the Kings is in a way kind of being used against them. I also think that the Warriors just have more cards to play. There's more options for Steve Kerr, and I think that's why some people were perhaps coming down his road in the first 2 games, because there are more options. As far as Mike Brown is concerned, so if Mitchell wasn't starting the starting lineup, it would be for Keegan Murray, correct?
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, and that's where, if we're looking at inexperience, I think that's been the biggest example, has been Keegan Murray, who's a damn good three-point shooter, has been for the first 82 games of his career, and has not been able to find anything in this series. Meanwhile, on the Warriors side, you haven't had to go to Kuminga and Moody as much, but Moses Moody has outplayed in the few minutes that he's gotten the other young guy on the other side.
Yeah, Moody's been good, and if he keeps playing the way that he's played the last 2, Moody can play the rest of the series as far as I'm concerned in that 15 minute. He looks like a real nice matchup for this Sacramento team, because as we found as this series goes on, steady players are what beats the Kings. Steady, calm players. Looney's, Moody's, Curry's, when he is playing that way without the turnovers that he had in the first 2 games, and being more aggressive and not turning it over. Sometimes less is more with Clay. If he's not hitting, take fewer shots, look to play a little more deliberately. I think he did that. Can you get Draymond to do that is the big question, and I think he can read the room pretty well from not being out there, so he'll be able to do it. Let's get a couple of calls in here before we call it an afternoon. 888-957-9570. Gloria in San Francisco here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Gloria.
Hey, fellas. Thank you for taking my call. Really, I just have some observations. One of the things I consider Sabonis being one of the better big men throughout the year. And so I was a little concerned about this matchup because of him and Fox together. And so I feel we witnessed Sacramento giving their best to the Warriors. And as a fan, I got really emotional. I just felt that they were beating us up, and they were hitting their threes, and they were getting rebounds and offensive rebounds, and having 1 and 2 extra shots to make points was just killing us. So we took their best shot, and yet we were still in the game to perhaps win it, but we didn't. So I was emotional, but then the third game, the Warriors came out and they flexed their pedigree, and they were able to show cream rises to the top. And so with Draymond being out, they were able to play with some other lineups and found out what could potentially work, which may be a blessing in disguise. So if Draymond comes back in, something doesn't work right, Steve Kerr won't be hesitant to put in different other players to perhaps get a better rotation for whatever Sacramento is throwing at us. If the Warriors continue to get their rebounds, limit Sacramento to second and third shots, we've exposed Sabonis, and I just feel that their best shot we've taken. Now we're going to see what Sacramento is made of, and I really think that we can win this in 6.
Thanks, Gloria. A lot to chew on there. Really good points. That's an excellent phone call. I think the part that stood out to me was Steve Kerr can go into the game thinking he's going to play these 8 or 9 or however he wants to do it. But I'm with Gloria, and I think you've touched on this a little bit too, just the fact that he does, if he needs to go to somebody for a minute here, a minute there, I think there is a little more confidence, especially at home, that he can do that. If maybe Kuminga is one of the guys that's in that role that might not be in the initial plan, but you can throw him out there for 3 or 4 minutes. It might be JaMychal Green for 3 or 4 minutes. Like, I do think Steve Kerr has a little more confidence. Anthony Lamb, if he has to, played a little bit. Like, I think there's more confidence that if he needs to make it a kitchen sink game again, even though you're more whole, then make it a kitchen sink game again.
Yeah, and you alluded to JD, the fact that the Kings play with a template. They play on script. When the game inevitably goes off script, which it often does in the playoffs, to me, the Golden State Warriors have an advantage because they have, one, more guys that have been there before, but two, more options Kirk can go to.
Let's wrap it up with Philmo Mike. Philmo, you're going to get the last word here before Game 4. What's on your mind, my brother?
Oh man, a lot of pressure. I got to make it good. So first of all, man, the Warriors have to change the narrative. I said it 3 times. They have to change it. If they want to win the game, don't be out here talking about, oh, we're getting this is happening. Bruh, act like you've been there before, like, oh, girl, or you like y'all just said, and stop playing around and fooling around. Like, nobody's going to feel sorry for you guys. Y'all been talking all that crap all year. Oh, Draymond, man, you know, it's March. I don't get up for March. Well, you're not even playing, bro. You only played 2 games in April, bro. Wake your game up. Let's get it cracking. You feel what I'm saying? And I'm just ready for it, but the Warriors got to know it's up to them to change the narrative. You can't be sitting around just saying, oh, feeling sorry for yourself. Nobody cares. We're trying to win this ship, JD. Hey, JD, you smoke. I said JD smoke Great Tree. And if you're not smoking Great Tree, it's definitely a problem.
Appreciate it, Phil Mo. It's a good way to end it. It's a good way to end it. Evan, thanks. I'm not really even going to add to it.
Shout out 420. That's all I got.
I'm just going to thank
Kevon Looney.
Yeah, shout out Kevon Looney. I'm going to thank you for stepping in here for Whitey for the last 3 hours. It's absolutely flown by. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next opportunity that we are able to work together, man. It's always great.
Same. No, thanks for having me on. And, it's a big shoe to fill, big seat to fill with Whitey Gleason. Appreciate you and the listeners having me on for 3 hours, and look forward to the next time we can do it again.
Yeah, and make sure you join me tomorrow for Warriors Live from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, 11 o'clock, so an expanded edition of Warriors Live. Stop by, have a beer, pre- and post-game from out there, as well as we'll keep it rolling all the way until 5 o'clock. Thanks to Craig Valentino. Real nice job there. And also just a little quick, I know we're a little late, but there has been an Andre Iguodala update, which just popped into the inbox here, so we'll read it before we get off the air. Iguodala reevaluated. He started to progress in his rehab of the wrist surgery and could begin to be cleared for light ball handling and shooting drills in the next 7 to 10 days. So he's going to be reevaluated again in 2 weeks. So basically,
got to get there.
Basically, you got to get to the conference finals before we can start having a conversation as to whether or not he'd be able to play. But that is the Iguodala update that we've been waiting on here for the last couple of weeks. That'll do it. Fox Sports Radio next here on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising.
Bye.